Whitney, you ready?
Yep.
All right, we want to welcome everyone to the Centerville City Council meeting being held here on May 7th. Had a 3-week break because we had 5 Tuesdays last month, so we're excited to be back. We welcome those that are on Zoom or those that are with us in the audience. We welcome staff, and let's go around and we'll do a roll call vote with the City Council members.
Meekum present.
Summer Hayes present.
Heyman present.
Plummer present.
So 4 of the 5 are present, and we hope to get the other council members shortly. So thank you, council members, for being here, and thank you, staff, for preparing the agenda for this meeting. Let's start with the legislative prayer or thought by Council Member Brian Plummer.
Thank you, Mayor. So I've been thinking about a question that came up in our discussions over branding a few weeks back, and it is, what is a Centervillian? And I've thought a lot about it, and I think it is more than just not being somebody from Bountiful or somebody from Farmington. So what does truly define a Centervillian? Centerville's roots run deep, dating back to a time when Native people and mountain men roamed this land, cherishing the beauty. Their reverence for nature, passed down through generations, still echoes in the spirits of our residents today. Then came the Mormon settlers here in the late 1840s, braving challenges and establishing a new community here. Traits of self-reliance, courage, and determination that continue to shape us even now. Through the years, faith and family have been pillars of our growth, leading to our incorporation as a city in 1915. And at the dawn of the new millennium, Centerville had evolved into a suburban haven where the values of home, family, and hard work thrived against the backdrop of urbanization. So what makes a Centervillian? It's a tapestry woven from threads of freedom, faith, family, self-reliance, courage, hard work, and resilience. A community united by a shared love for our home on the Wasatch Front. And I'll conclude with a prayer. Heavenly Father, we gather today and we are grateful for this day and the blessing that we've had with the rain that's replenished the water here on the Wasatch Front. We ask for your protection on those who are entrusted for the community's safety. We ask for guidance during this meeting, and we ask for guidance on our city employees as they serve our community and our residents. And we ask these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Councilmember Plummer. If you'd all rise with me and repeat the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, now we're to the open session. This is a chance for any member, anyone that may be so inclined to come up and voice their thoughts on any matters that they've been thinking about. Just identify yourself and where you may be from, if that's the case. So that open session is now open. Seeing nobody online, nobody commenting, we'll move to the business items section. Okay. Our first business item today is a public hearing matter regarding a zone map amendment on 1193 North Main Street, 1167 North Main Street. And staff that will present will be Mike Eggett. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Good to see you tonight. Yeah, the applicant on this one is Alexander and Shelby Dushku. They're requesting a rezone change from AL to RL on their property. And the address is noted in the packet is 1166, or excuse me, it is 1193 North and 1167 North Main Street. And there's also a co-property owner, which is Jeffrey Michael and Joanne Stevens, who are at 1167. And then I believe this is Shelby here, so I'm gonna get that.
Joanne.
Or Joanne, this is Joanne.
Joni.
Yeah, Shelby's not on yet, is she?
No, I don't think they're able to join that,
So you're representing them tonight? Okay, there you go. So Joanne will be representing tonight. In looking at the Planning Commission staff report, I'm gonna go over a few things from that one, because I think that's where a lot of the heart is of the recommendation from the Planning Commission. They did approve or recommend approval by the City Council for the rezone request from AL to RL. And so with that report, there's 4 requirement review and analysis filters that were looked at. The first one is the proposed amendment consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the general plan. And we noted that the two parcels in question are located within the neighborhood 4 northwest described in our Plan 12-40-5 section of the general plan. The first goal is to establish an appropriate land use patterns and land use transitions. And then, as evidenced, the properties located in the northeast and west are currently zoned RL and have single-family homes located on these properties. 2 additional competing goals are preserve semi-rural areas for current property owners to preserve viability of the area for potential future development. With this being a large AL area, obviously that does allow for the opportunity for that to be future developed or to be rezoned to RL. So that consideration is in alignment with land use patterns established in neighborhood 4 of the general plan. If you're curious what the RL zoning is, it's 4 units to an acre. And with the AL, as you can see, it would be 2 units to an acre. So you're getting a little bit more opportunity for development here. I did fail to note that the total acreage for the request is 3.34 acres. So take that into account as you think about what that might look like at a future development with that rezone. And then you'll see on page 2 of the Planning Commission report, there's a small section of that zoning map, if you're curious what that looks like. You can see again that the yellow is the RL, and then there's the school to the south. So that helps you. And there's actually 2 parcels, even though it's showing 3. The upper parcel is actually 1 parcel with 1 parcel ID number, and then the lower one is a separate parcel. So
Okay, that was one question I
Yeah,
had, Mike.
for-
Even though on the county search, it shows that it's 2 parcels, it's really 1.
Yeah, that came up in the Planning Commission. I think it's just a drawing error on
Okay.
on the side of the county, but of course, with the subdivision plat, that would get resolved anyway, or be expected to resolve the future development where it happened. And then you can see the school is the institutional in the blue. Going down to the second review point, the proposed zoning amendment, is it harmonious with the overall character of the existing development in the vicinity of subject property? The answer is yes. In fact, it not only does it not change the usage of what's going on around the property, but it itself is on an island, and we're trying to, when you look at general plan and future land, you should try to eliminate islands where it makes sense, and in this case, it seems to make sense. So that's another way to look at that. And the Planning Commission did agree with that analysis. And then number 3, what is the extent to which the proposed amendment may adversely affect the adjacent property? Staff believes the proposed amendment would have minimal adverse impacts, if any, on adjacent properties, because again, it's in alignment with what's being already in place around it. The last one is, what is the adequacy of facilities and services intended to serve the subject property? And all the facilities and services are already readily there. Obviously, they would just need to extend from city facilities into the site where it to be developed in the future. So that's the analysis. You'll see then on that same review, well, yeah, that's even better. On your review, those are the same findings and factors that the Planning Commission reviewed in making their decision. And you'll see the Planning Commission vote was 6 in favor of recommending approval of the rezone request, and then we had 1 commissioner who was not present that night. So I think that's really as straightforward as it gets, but if you have any questions for me and or the applicant group with Ms. Stevens, we're here.
I think you said, but how big is this piece of property?
3.34 acres.
Well, Combined.
Combined, yeah,
Correct.
combined, there's two property owners. So the first one is 1.3,
1.314.
yeah, 1.314 acres, and the other is 2.03 acres, the larger portion, yeah. And I did fail to note, but there is a new home on the 1.314 acre parcel that's been developed, and then there's an older home that faces Main Street on the 2.03 acres, and then there's some old, kind of, I don't know if they'd be agricultural buildings or accessory buildings in the back on the property. And the previous representation was that those buildings would be anticipated to be demoed, but the home would remain, and the newer home would remain, and then as they looked at future development, they would design around that configuration. That's at least what was evidenced in our review with the planning commission.
So there's access to this off of Main Street?
That's what's anticipated, I believe, right? Yeah, that's what's anticipated, that's what,
It is right now.
So, Mike, I've got a few questions.
Sure.
So when I go to the county's website, it lists a trustee, Greg Oman, as the owner of the
I meant to bring that up.
the 1193 North parcel as opposed to the Dushkus.
Yeah.
But I see a property owner affidavit as part of the packet as well. So can you walk us through ownership?
That came up in the planning commission as well, and Shelby Dushko, Ms. Dushku, addressed that. She said they had previously completed purchase of the property, but that purchase hadn't cleared as far as the title with the county, and it just hasn't been updated. But that sale has been completed.
Okay. You've talked about the accessory or outbuildings.
Uh-huh.
As they stand currently from moving from the AL to the RL, will they be in compliance with setbacks?
I believe they would be illegal nonconformance, probably. Do you think, Whitney, does that
But
sound right?
under zoning, would that not, you wouldn't be legal, an illegal non-conforming?
They just would not have future development potential rights, is my understanding. And
The
again,
homes will, I think, from what they've shown us, will comply with setbacks. The accessory buildings will be torn down.
yeah, like for any future development, the accessory buildings would have to be removed to move forward.
For a future development or as part of the zoning?
Well, not as part of the rezone request, but as part of a development request with the subdivision.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because they would probably be grandfathered in until such time that they.
Well, that's why I'm asking you what the trigger is for the grandfather. Is the rezone triggers that, or is it a building permit?
In my experience,
triggers
it's tied to the subdivision request when that kind of inquiry or that
that?
requirement.
So as opposed to a
comes into play.
rezone, a subdivision application
yeah.
would be the trigger, is
That's
what you're
been,
saying.
that's been my experience.
Lisa, is that your understanding of the ordinance?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question. I don't know that the zoning changes the nonconformity. Like, if each zone had differing setback requirements and the new change, was different, then I would say, yes, it triggers it. But when it's the same setback, they're not,
Are the setbacks the same in RL and AL?
No.
for
That's
accessory.
that's what
No, they're not.
that's what I'm getting at. I don't think they are, and so that's why I'm asking that, it seems like in this case, there's a potential, I don't know, and that's why I'm asking the question, but there's a potential that a rezone triggers.
I'll tell
The
you, they're
requirement to
already
demo those.
non-conforming. They already don't meet the setback, so that won't change with the rezone.
And the way I understand it was.
Sorry, say that again?
The accessory buildings already don't conform to the existing setback for AL. So if we rezone it to RL, they still won't meet the setback.
And which setback is more restrictive?
RL.
RL would be more restrictive is my guess. And so therefore, in my mind, if a rezone is approved, that then means that part of that approval means the Dushkus would have to demolish those two or one of either non-conforming buildings.
And they are working on their subdivision application, so that will be coming.
But I don't want to get us in a position where it's, well, once you get your subdivision, I'd rather, we've been burned before or almost been burned before in the past where we were a little more lenient in our interpretation of the ordinance, and I don't want to get into that again.
I feel like if there's not a standard tied to an understanding that that is the requirement in the rezone request, we may not be able to compel or request that requirement at this time. I feel like there should be a standard in place if that's what we want to do to protect. I understand the
But the
commentary.
standard is if you're gonna do a rezone.
Yeah,
Would comply with that zoning code, and therefore that's the trigger. It's
Yeah.
not the subdivision application.
I guess it would come down to interpretation by the council and or legal of how that would apply.
Okay, that's my interpretation of it, based off of what I'm being told right now. And that may be just a good flag for staff to think through and maybe bring us back, clarify language in the future as it relates to our ordinance. Because in my mind, if you're going to go through a zone change that then has a change in setbacks, part of doing that rezone, you're going to have to think as an applicant or a property owner is, I've got to demolish these buildings. Yeah, I probably will demolish them anyway as part of a subdivision, but the trigger is the rezone, not the subdivision.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept, and I'm not debating the merits. I understand exactly what you're saying. I'm just saying, in conversations I've had with previous legal and in other cities, the interpretation has been, it's more of a planning tool or guidance tool on where we want the property to go when it's future developed. And so the subdivision and the development plan or goals for that property is when that kind of conversation would happen. But I do recognize and understand your position in what you're articulating.
Okay, I'm just, our ordinance seems to be written that way. I don't know that I'm in favor of it or against it. I'm just saying that this seems like our
I
ordinance is
think we
written
need
that
more
way.
clarifying factors
Correct.
in our zoning code.
Yes.
For this very purpose. Yeah.
Okay,
I believe
perfect.
that's where I would end on that.
Okay, so my other question related to future access. It appears, and I think I've heard some historical background, and when the applicant comes up, she can, or applicant's representative give us a little insight on it. But there is a triangular little piece of property off of 1250 North, which is the cul-de-sac to the west,
Oh, yeah.
that was purchased by a Strawberry, or owned by a Strawberry Fields LLC. That seems to be a purchase to obstruct access to that parcel at some future point. I guess what I'm asking staff is, will the distance from Main Street to the back property line of 1193 be restrictive in terms of where they locate a potential home based off of fire access?
We actually installed a fire hydrant.
We need you to come up.
Do you want to come up?
So do you want to finish staff questions and then go to applicant?
Yeah.
Is there any further staff questions?
I probably have a list, and then maybe after those, we can revisit. I don't really care. It's whatever you want to do, Mayor. I'm open to a group dialogue.
I'm
Joni's great. I've heard wonderful things about Joni.
I'm fine with Joni coming up.
Okay.
It looks like Mike is
We
as
can
well.
share,
Sager.
we can share. So we actually worked with the sewer department to drill under that parcel to allow a sewer line there. The water comes off of Main, and there's a fire hydrant right by our driveway that provides access. for
On
that
Main
whole-
Street,
Off of Main. The main water line,
correct, but is the hydrant on Main Street?
no, it's right by
So
our
you have a
house.
private hydrant.
Oh.
Right
Okay.
by our
They were
house.
required to install
It was
that.
our
So they have a
Christmas
private
present.
Within 5
Okay,
What they're
okay.
saying, yeah.
So then that
So we
leads,
shouldn't have to access anything on 1250 at this point.
okay, perfect. So then the next question would be maybe a Mike question. Sorry, Joni, you may
That's
come
okay.
up again.
Take a seat.
This seems to be, maybe they'll put a cul-de-sac in, I don't know if
That's
they've already
what they've
talked
said
about
is
it.
the intent,
Okay, so this would
yeah.
not be a potential flag lot or an infill
No,
lot
the
type
plan,
of
the
situation?
plan that they've discussed with Whitney and brought up in the planning commission when it came up was a cul-de-sac drive.
Okay,
With homes wrapping around it, the existing home staying where it was, and the Stevens home staying where it is.
UDOT was okay, that we're
We,
aware of?
again,
with
we
the
hadn't had those
ingress,
conversations, because we
egress?
would at the subdivision.
Yeah, exactly, because you're not trying to address that.
Right,
Because
again,
it's a
we're high-
rezone.
We're high level here, right?
I know, yes.
I have another question about that.
Yes.
Come on up.
When we were going through the process, we had 2 access points on our driveway that we had to close one off. So when we were working with UDOT to have that approved, we
told them the potential plans for the entire area once, if that ever happened. This has always kind of been our goal. So we're happy to work with the Dushkus in making it come to fruition. But they have in their notes that it would align with the driveway across that goes into the preschool.
Yes, yeah.
Over that way.
Yeah.
Initially, they wanted us to move it to the south end of our property. So where our driveway is now is placed to the north of our property. And that's where, if a cul-de-sac came in, the driveway would be just one access point.
Which ironically, the
Onto-
accessory buildings are probably right in line up and would be demolished as part of that.
Correct, exactly, and then that's what, kind of where I was going a little bit with that. But
Yeah.
again, if it never gets developed, and yet it stays RL, then, yeah.
But then they just don't have future development rights either, even with the zoning change. I mean, right, admittedly, that's,
Yeah, and we can have a different discussion, because if it wasn't a friendly discussion between an applicant who wanted to rezone their property, and they had a illegal grandfathered use for an accessory building, and then our ordinance didn't trigger them to repair or fix that,
yeah.
then that becomes an issue. It's not an issue in this case, but it would be an issue if you had a case in which they rezoned their property and then kept their accessory building as non-compliant. And I wouldn't agree with that.
Yeah, and there could be scenarios, that, I think.
You see where I'm going with that
To the core
one,
of your
Mike?
point, I think that's why we need maybe a little bit more
Correct.
guidance in the zoning code.
Okay.
As far as the
Those
rezone.
those are all my questions, sorry, Mayor.
Right, are good. No, great questions. Other questions for Mike? Okay, stand by.
May I just really quickly, is there a landlocked parcel behind the Stevens parcel,
No, that's owned by,
the Roseman?
yeah,
That's owned by you as well?
it's owned by the Rosemans.
But it is landlocked back there, is that
I
correct?
wonder if it's the same thing with the county. I wonder if it's got the same property ID and they haven't drawn,
Oh,
they
I
have that
see.
line.
No,
in
I
there.
got you. Roseman's are
I
up on the
suspect that's what's
circle.
happened.
My bad. Okay.
Sometimes what happens if it was two parcel ID numbers and then they combine them for tax purposes, the county often leaves the line there, but they have the same, they might have the same tax ID.
I think it's
And they
a,
show the same acreage as well.
yeah, I think it's a relaxed approach. Were I doing things, I would eliminate those lines for this very purpose. I think it creates more confusion, but
Yeah.
they have their process.
Okay, applicant, you want to present or to share more?
Just that we,
Would you just state your name for the record?
Joni
Eve?
Stevens or Joanne Stevens, and we feel, everyone that's
Thank you,
planning
Douglas.
on working on this cul-de-sac, we all grew up in Centerville and have loved having it be our home, and hope that it continue to be home for our children, and feel that this is in compliance with the plans of the city, and hope that you will approve it. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Joey. All right, any questions for the applicant before we go to public hearing with this? All right, so this is a public hearing matter. So this is a public hearing for a rezone on Main Street. Sorry, I put my paper on the floor. 1193 North Main Street and 1167 North Main Street. So that public hearing is now open. Anybody that's in the audience or maybe online is welcome to address this. Just state who you are and where you're from. Seeing nobody online or in the audience addressing the matter, then I will close the public hearing. And we will go back to if there's any further questions for staff and/or the applicant from council members. No further questions, so do we have a motion in regards to ordinance number 2024-06?
I'll make a motion that we adopt ordinance number 2024-06 regarding zone map amendment for the properties located at 1193 and 1167 North Main Street from AL zone to RL zone.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. We have further discussion. Let's do a roll call vote, starting with Councilwoman Meekum.
Aye.
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 That's unanimous. Let it be noted that Councilwoman Hurst is now with us, so that's unanimous 5-0. That's not, just noting for the record, okay? Thank you. Boy, I already got it from Councilwoman Haven tonight,
I'm taking all kinds of crap today.
So that passes unanimously. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Jody, for being here and for the work that was put into that. So, okay, appreciate it. All right. Are y'all here? So I don't have to. Okay.
I'm sorry I was late.
Let the meeting minutes reflect that Councilmember Hurst was in the audience at about 6:50, is that 7:20?
7:20-ish, yeah.
I just thought you wanted to be recognized. All right, let's go.
I appreciate it.
Let's go to the another public hearing matter. This is on fiscal year 2025 tentative budget. Now, as Nate's coming up, obviously, we all know that we had a council retreat at the end of March for 2 evenings to go over the budget at that point in time. So, Nate, I'm asking that you have your set thing. I'm not telling you not to do your set thing, but what's come up since those, since that retreat, specifically still point out loud and clear for us, okay? All righty.
Thank you, Mayor. And yeah, we will address some of those changes. We haven't had too many changes, but we will address some of those. Thank Whitney for driving here since computer wouldn't connect. So to start out, just a brief introduction to this. We went through the similar process earlier tonight with the RDA budget. But just as a reminder, the state law requires that the budget officer, which in our case is our city manager, submits the proposed budget by the first meeting in May. It also requires that the city council adopts a tentative budget and sets the date and time of the final public hearing. The budget that's before you tonight it does reflect a balanced budget, and we believe it shows significant progress towards funding key services provided by the city, which include public safety, parks, transportation, culinary water, and drainage. Additionally, the recruiting and retention and training of productive employees is a high priority to maintain the knowledgeable and qualified staff that we need to maintain the highest level of service expected by Centerville's residents and businesses. And finally, this budget provides the necessary funding to maintain and replace the city's critical infrastructure, as well as its aging fleet and equipment. So the adoption of the tentative budget makes this budget public and initiates a period of public comment. Once the tentative budget is adopted, it will be available for review on our website as well as a physical copy here at City Hall. As we go through this, please note that you may not ultimately agree with all the details of this budget.
Excuse me.
But we do have the opportunity to amend the budget before adopting a final budget in June. And then there's also note that there's a few items that are still estimates and that we're still working to finalize some numbers, so staff may have some suggested changes as well. The next one, just look at a brief timeline of how this process has gone. We started this back in January when departments started to compile their requests. They submitted that back to the finance department in February. We compiled it, and then Brant and myself met with all the department heads to review their requests. At that point, I think we were short 1.1, 1.3, somewhere in there, $1 million. So we've worked hard over these last few months to shrink it down to have a balanced budget that you have before you tonight. As Mayor mentioned, in March, we had a budget retreat, and that was the first opportunity the public had to attend or listen to that meeting. And we really went through all the details during the budget retreat. And that brings us to tonight, where we have the presentation of the tentative budget. We do have this listed as a public hearing, although not required by law to have a public hearing. I do think it's a good idea to give the public, allow the public to give input on this process. And then you'll see in June is when we have to adopt the final budget. You'll see a few other items that I listed there that aren't necessarily budget, but they do correlate to the budget. So we'll have to have a public hearing on the adoption of the executive officer's compensation, which is a new law passed by the legislatures this year. And then we'll also have the adoption of our compensation schedule and the judge's salary. And then we will need to set a final tax rate or set a new tax rate and schedule the truth and taxation process. Next slide. So here on this slide are some items that you'll see throughout the budget that don't necessarily, or you'll see them throughout each fund. The first one is the employee compensation. Included in this budget is a recommendation to give employees a 3.6% cost of living increase. This is reflective of the CPI index from December to December, so December 22 to December 23. And then as well as a recommendation to give each department a 2% merit. Historically, how we've done this is department gets 2% to be allocated by their department head, so they can give according to each employee's merit. Also in this budget throughout the different funds is an estimate for the property insurance. Those range from a 12 to 15% increase. We have not received our final numbers from our insurance company yet, and so that's still an estimate, and that hasn't changed since the budget.
When will we get that estimate, Nate?
Excuse me?
When will we get that estimate, do you think?
Hopefully soon. I know Bryce has reached out to him today, and I don't think he's heard back.
Can you define hopefully soon?
I would say this month sometime. I think that's,
7 to 10 days,
yeah.
In 10 days?
within 10 days.
Oh, awesome, okay.
We have got our final numbers for our medical and dental insurance. Those are increasing 9.9%. I believe at the budget retreat, I think I had 6% down. So that was more than we expected. And then the other adjustment that you'll see throughout the funds is our interest revenue. We've just adjusted those to reflect our actual revenues received. So some adjusted more than others. All right, so now we'll dive into the general fund. You have your copy of the budget. You can follow along and feel free to stop at any time. As we go through some of the finer details of this, there can be discussion on it, so feel free to stop. The first part of our general fund revenues is our property tax. We are not recommending a property tax increase as part of this budget. We don't receive our finalized property tax revenue from the county, which would include our new growth revenue, until June. So just a reminder, the way property tax works in Utah is we get the same amount year after year, unless we have new growth or unless we go through the truth and taxation process and raise our rate. So right now we're not recommending a rate increase, and we won't get those new growth numbers from the county until the first part of June. Our next big adjustment is the sales tax revenue. These last couple of years we've budgeted $5.7 million. Based on this year and a slight decrease in a projected decrease in our sales tax revenue, we've shrunk that to $5.5 million, which is a decrease of $200,000. And then our franchise tax for the natural gas, we've increased it $50,000 to a total of $350,000, And that's because Dominion Energy has increased their rates. So we think this will be just reflective of their increase. It's essentially a sales tax percentage-based fee that we collect. So we're increasing it because they increased their rates.
Hey, can I ask you a question about sales tax?
Yes.
In Brad's cover letter to us, he indicated that sales tax revenues have remained strong in recent years, but have shown some signs of instability. And obviously, we have a decrease of $200,000 here projected. Do we know what's driving that?
There's a lot of theories. I don't have any
COVID pull forward.
I will take
Strong evidence?
your best guess.
So I think inflation works two ways. I think inflation can provide more as an item costs more, then we collect a higher amount of sales tax. But as we do that, I think disposable income shrinks. So people are spending what they need to, but maybe not as much as the extra. I think the last couple years we've had, when COVID hit, we saw the home remodel skyrocket. I think that has slowed down a little bit as people have returned to the office or have completed their home remodel. I think,
They're vacationing, and so
Yeah.
they're actually traveling and using their disposable income to travel instead of home remodels.
It's not like we're losing businesses or businesses are drastically decreasing. I mean, I guess I was concerned, like, are we losing businesses, right, that historically promoted our sales?
I don't think we're necessarily losing businesses, but the spending has definitely decreased in certain areas, particularly our strong home remodel, Colonial, Home Depot.
Got it.
And I'm not even saying, they're actually doing well, but just keep in mind, our sales tax projections just a few years ago was 4.9 million, I believe. And then it bumped up $800,000 because of all this stimulus money that was into the, so we weren't anticipating 5.7 million a couple years ago, but we got 5.7, so we just matched the 5.7 to our current fiscal year. Because generally you see a 3% growth in sales tax, but we thought we're not gonna build in a growth because we're just not sure what sales tax is gonna do. We might hit the 5.7, which is fine, but we prefer to have a little bit of more of a buffer in the sales tax. So we're gonna drop it to 5.5 to start creating that buffer back. But really what Nate and I need is 1 or 2 more years of just sales tax data with a normal economy, with where our economy is now, to start making really good forecasting.
I appreciate that historical context. That's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, based off of your weekly update a week and a half ago, it was maybe you will get just right at break even by the end of the
Yeah, and I don't want to go
fiscal
too much into this. I mean, so I get a monthly sales tax report regarding all cities. I think there's, 80 cities on there. And Nate and I felt pretty good about our numbers until we compared against the rest of the cities that were around 18-20% increase in their sales tax, and we're down at 8. 0. We broke even. We were happy with breaking
0.5%,
even.
yeah.
Wait, you're talking about their budget or their actuals?
Their actual sales tax collections went up 15%, which
Really?
creates a conversation that Mike Agate, Nate, and I will be having of just trying to understand what that looks like.
Why did
What does
we
that
miss
mean
it?
for Centerville? So, just, that's creating different conversations for us, just to kind of understand our market and potentially where we might
And that's
make
coming
some
back to what
arguments.
Shaylin's saying. Are we losing, because we have lost businesses. I can tell you businesses that we have lost.
Well, there's a car shop just on Main Street that's no longer there. So we are losing
So
some.
there's losing businesses, but as far as their
Lost.
impact to the sales tax numbers, I can't necessarily share that, or I don't know. But anyway, nonetheless, we are having conversations internally of what we should be looking at from an economic development standpoint, that, to continue to make sure we're strong on that side.
And I think there is something to do largely with what Nate's done. If you looked at our largest sales tax generators, they were building supplies during those major pandemic years. And so if you have a consumer shift away from, okay, I've done my home remodel, I've done my bathroom update or my kitchen update, and now I'm done with that, and I'm gonna go do other things, even if it's within our own local areas, from an entertainment perspective, you could see that shift.
Totally makes sense.
I don't know that that's true. I mean, I'm just thinking anecdotally, maybe that's what's happening.
In economic development, Centerville has been strong, consistently strong. However, the other cities are always continually reinventing themselves. So Farmington Station, that takes disposable income from us, right? The Costco takes disposable income from, all these things. And if we're just stagnant in our economic development, then that's what it'll be. You'll have other businesses popping up in other communities. So we get young power sports, which will be huge, but we continually need to be, not necessarily reinventing ourselves, but keeping up with what is the trend in that. And we haven't been active in that, but hopefully, and Mike's got a strong background that he's gonna help us start moving in that direction, so, yeah.
We can go to the next page. One above that. There we go. Okay, another big change that we did in this budget since the budget retreat is our subdivision inspection fees and our zoning subdivision fees. We've talked about this in meetings in the last couple of months. But historically, we've been charging a fee to the developers for engineering inspection services, but we haven't been collecting the actual cost as our fee schedule currently states. Mike Eggett and I have met, and we've started that process of, and we'll start working out the kinks on how we're gonna do that, but we do plan on billing the developers for the actual cost of the professional service. So we've increased this revenue line to 100,000, and you'll also see on the engineering page, on page 35, that we've increased the community development engineering services to 200,000 so that these revenue and expense lines offset each other. Okay. Another major change was our justice court revenue. We've decreased that to 272,000, and that's just to reflect our estimated actuals for the current fiscal year. And then I just wanted to note our sale of fixed assets account, which is $132,500, is comprised of 3 police vehicles. In the streets, we have 4 trucks and a 10-wheeler, and then parks disposing of a truck with plow equipment. Something that I don't have on here, but wanted to make note that I just got word that our likelihood of receiving our EMPG grant, which is an emergency preparedness grant, that we were budgeting $9,000 in the public safety grants line. We're most likely not going to get that grant. We always have in the past, but apparently the feds have reallocated the fundings for emergency management. So we were informed that our likelihood of getting it is extremely low. I talked to Louisa yesterday. She said she's still going to apply, but we don't have high hopes for it. So I'll most likely be taking that $9,000 out of our revenue.
Which line item was that one,
Yeah.
Nate? Remind me.
It's our, on the grants, under public safety grants.
Line 3845.
3363.
Okay, got it.
So right now we have 28,900 budgeted.
So most likely on an adopted budget, we'll reduce that by 9.
Yeah. We should know by then. But yeah, since it's not looking good, we'll probably take it out. All right, next slide, you'll just see a breakdown of our general fund expenditures. You can see that our city puts a high priority on our public safety, as between police and fire comprise of 42%, and then public works at 17%. Again, we'll go through a number of highlights through each of the general fund departments. Some are significant changes, some are smaller, but have just changed since our budget retreat. And then some of the items that we'll go over are just items that we've discussed, but might not have made a firm decision on. So again, we can stop at any point to discuss any of these. Input from other department heads as well, if they have any.
Nate, just on this public works at 17.4%, I know that we have money from the enterprise fund coming into the general Is this 17.4% streets mostly?
Yes, so that's Public Works admin and streets. That does not, that's a good point. That,
Okay.
this is just general funds, so it doesn't include our enterprise funds, like our water, sanitation, and drainage. That's a good observation there. All right, our next slide, starting the administration department, we have a number of changes. Again, I think we've discussed most of these, and some of these are new. We have added $3,000 for email encryption. And then new since our budget retreat, we just added $10,000 for contract software. We got a few bids back for this. And Lisa and Jennifer feel like this 10,000 will be sufficient right now, but they're still reviewing contracts.
That's the Civic Optimize?
No, this is Cobblestone.
But it is for contract management and keeping track of the terms and provisions.
Again, we're still in the early stages, haven't really dove into the contract specifics yet, but we feel like 10,000 is a good number.
We'll be having, again, this is the budget, but we'll be having a conversation when the agreement comes before you for us to present what it will do and how it'll benefit us.
I just had a note in my,
Yeah, we just wanted to do enough research
It was
to be able to put a line item for next year's budget. And the company we're currently negotiating with also has a 30-day free trial, so we would take advantage of that.
I believe we removed Civic Optimize.
Yes.
I thought that was before the budget retreat, but maybe not.
okay.
Yeah, we've removed Civic Optimize. Okay, we've also added 14,000 for HR software to help us track our employees and training and goes with it. In our marketing line, we have $25,000 for our new branding rollout, and that has not changed since our budget retreat. And then in our network and equipment licensing, we've reduced some of the services provided by the TechServe contract, so that's why you see the decrease in that line.
Are we going with that Bamboo group then on the HR?
Bamboo HR, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, and our attorney, we are requesting one additional intern. This is planned for just a seasonal summer type intern position, and we've allocated $5,000 in wages for that.
Lisa already has a list of work for that intern to do.
Subject to the comment of seeing if they get credit, I have been trading phone calls with the admissions at the law school, so we'll find out about that as well.
And our fire services, the city pays an assessment to the South Davis Fire District. Their budget discussions are still ongoing, but right now we're looking at about a 2.9% increase, so that'll bring our total assessment to just shy of $1.2 million.
In our tentative, we were at 5%, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And police.
Mayor, do you want to comment, or do we think we're going to get 3 as opposed to 5?
So we've had our initial meeting of the admin committee to discuss. We're pretty happy with the budget where we are from an admin committee. We'll be meeting again on Thursday to discuss more of just understanding the current budget process, because we've set so many expectations for South Davis Fire, targets of how much money they should have in reserves, how much they should be. So we just want to make sure we're on the same page with South Davis Fire on what our expectations are for their reserves. But as of right now, the budget looks good. They had a property tax increase last year, and we anticipate that property tax increase would hold them over for 3 to 4 years before they consider another one. So we're doing okay this year, so. The challenge was 4%. So with the 4% though, each city is different based on, because the assessments are based on property, and personal property and property values, not on population. So that changes throughout the year, where West Bountiful might go down and Bountiful goes up, so ours was 2.9% in that formula. So thank you, Bountiful and North Salt Lake, for picking up the tab.
You're All right. And our police, I know we had a work session on this about their request for the Taser 10s. I wanted to note that I believe in the budget retreat, we had budgeted 20,000. Lieutenant Atkerson was able to renegotiate and was able to get it just shy of 18,000. And that is currently proposed in this budget. In our streets, since our budget retreat, we've added $10,000 to our signs for upgrade the flashers at the junior high school flock. And then right now we have streetlight repairs budget for 40,000, which is an increase of $5,000 over this current year. I recently got a call from staff that's concerned that 40,000 may not be enough. They've gone through some recent upgrades or fixes to some of their lights, and just with the way cost of those items are going, I think that 40,000 will be tight. So just wanted to make that note, that we do have 40,000 budgeted, but there is some concern there.
Great thing with this contract, and Mike, you can correct me if I'm wrong, they've done a great job being responsive and repairing our lights to the point where they're really getting them done, and so we spent a little bit more than what we anticipated in this first fiscal year. Is this fair, Mike? I think it'd be good just to clarify why it's a little bit more.
Yeah, that's a fair statement. I think what we're finding is we're getting into a lot of the repairs that we haven't got into. Now we've got some of the bigger areas that we've got to do. One thing that we are going to be trying for is to see if we can't get a grant to go to LED on our lights, which will save us money with Rocky Mountain Power. So we'll see if we're successful with that grant, but that's an area we're working on. But yeah, it is increased cost, and we thought we'd have it pretty well wrapped up, but there are some huge things that we got to knock out of the way.
I am not getting as many complaints about our street lights that I used to, and I think they have been responsive. When we get the complaint or the concern, they're out there fixing it, which has been great. So.
And
See
it's
them
really
over here,
worked.
do they work on the city hall ones or just out on the streets?
City Hall ones were just done.
They were just done, but one of them is a strobe light now.
Sweet.
We put it by your house.
That was intentional.
Just, I thought it was a down power line the first night. I looked out the window and there's this blue
Okay.
light.
Well, let us know.
I think that's in our parking lot, so I think that's Bruce, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, Bruce has been managing those, so that's a little different than this
And
contract.
we could have them come over too, but they've done us a great job. Our calls have went way down, and they also have the online reporting, so residents can go out and put it in automatically and know that it's been issued. And then Mark gets an alert, I get an alert, and the administrative assistant gets an alert. So we know that work's taking place.
Thanks, Mike.
Just to clarify, I think, Nate, you said the light was for the junior high? I think that was for Centerville Elementary, is that right?
Centerville Junior High.
Centerville Junior High.
Where's,
Yeah,
like, we already have a light there.
These are the remote control devices to turn on
The
20
crossing guard lights.
The crossing guard lights.
Are you thinking of the big overhead?
Yeah,
No, I'm not.
No, not
I'm
the
just,
hot
I just
signal.
don't know what that's for. I have a note that there was something for Centerville Elementary. For our budget retreat. So I'm trying to, what is it for at the junior
I thought there was
high?
gonna be, you guys were gonna look into, that was a while ago though, was that with this budget?
No, I don't.
No, I have it written
I don't know
down.
that we-
So what's the extra $5,000 for? As it relates to junior high?
Oh, you're talking about the 10,000?
The 10,000?
Sorry, 10.
That was for you could probably explain it better than I can, but it's
Yeah,
for
request, it's a
flashers.
remote control, so in terms of winter and all that, turning on the 20 slow down school zone crossing, these are devices to put in remote control, so you don't have to get out, turn them on and off. You can actually do it from remote control, so these devices will be manual, you can have them on a schedule. So that's the request to install those lights here.
Okay.
Are we doing that at the other schools as well? I mean, I know, obviously, we're just doing the junior high, but is there a plan in place for?
There's already quite a few that have been done.
Okay.
As our resident crossing guard, yeah, which ones are remote and which ones are not
Yeah.
remote right now?
So I think both of the ones on 4th East are remote.
Okay.
Centerville Elementary was, and then it wasn't, and I don't know if it is. There's one remote at Stewart. And there,
Fort doesn't have one anymore.
oh, that's right, they took theirs down,
No,
because they did have one.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
Somebody's reading.
so this is the one over at the junior high, and on Wednesdays, like on Wednesday mornings, they have to be turned on and off 4 times, and the same on Friday afternoons.
Right, because of the
Because
different
of the
schedules.
early out
Yeah,
and late start.
right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're jogging my memory here. I think what we talked about in, budget retreat about the elementary school, that's still happening. We've just added the 10,000 since the budget retreat for these crossers.
Okay, that's,
Okay.
that makes more sense from my note, because this is in addition
Yeah, we
to what we
discussed,
discussed in that.
Yes.
correct, yeah, we
You were saying,
discussed a
okay,
number
the
of items.
Centerville Elementary stuff was already embedded in this number. The extra 10 is to move to remote access for the junior high one.
Right, and we just added that a few weeks ago.
Man, 10 grand for a used car or a remote sense to off on. Okay.
A few years ago, Paul actually got some electricians to try and do it for us. I mean, because when Paul Cutler was the mayor, he's like, there's nothing to that, and you can go buy a TV remote for $15. Why do we have these crossing guards? Because there was one winter that we had several crossing guards injured trying to turn their lights on and off. 2 of them went to the hospital. They fell and got slivers and stuff in their hands. They had to go to the hospital to get them out. We don't know exactly what happened to them, but, and so he's like, why are we not having, as easy as remote controls are? So Paul found somebody, and they did part of them, and then, but on Main Street just then, the state came through and changed them to solar. So then they didn't work with the ones that these guys had made. So the ones that aren't on Main Street still have the ones that these guys did for us.
Not all remote controls are created equal.
Well,
Right.
And when you're talking about liability of making sure a light is on or off, that's, something I don't think we should mess with, so.
I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah, no, I'm just in terms of what they developed was really cool and really neat, what they were able to create, but I didn't have faith in the technology. I didn't.
We had a group of residents here last meeting or 2 meetings ago about First South traffic calming.
Yes,
I know Mike's gonna not like this, but is there any consideration?
Not at this time. We're gonna have a conversation, but no, it's not in the budget. Because it's not a conversation about First South, it's a conversation about 20 roads in Centerville getting traffic calming. That's the conversation.
I disagree with that, but.
I'm just saying it's gonna be much bigger, and that's gonna be a separate conversation of just adding in one that requires a lot more thought than just saying, let's address this one situation. So no, it's not in.
I keep on getting, I keep on getting,
It's a conversation we can
By
have.
those residents.
It's a conversation we're going to have, which
asking, when are
Mike
you guys
and,
talking about this again?
Mike and Mark are conducting, they're researching, because it's not, we want to come in with both sides, not just representing the pros or the cons. We want to come in saying, here's what we've determined based on our conversations with our counterparts in other cities. And
So one idea that I proposed to staff, and I don't disagree with them on this point, but I thought, hey, what if you took the temporary speed bump that was over at Center Point and you put it on First South? Staff wisely pointed out that a lot different speeds potentially, and if the speed hump becomes dislodged on one of our roads, it becomes a much bigger problem than if it's behind Center Point. So
gets dislodged at 5, 10 miles per hour, so imagine at 25.
correct.
30.
Yeah.
So
So no.
I tried to float that idea, and I agree, that's probably not an ideal situation where we could get some
But
liability and whatnot.
But to your point, though, I do like, is there anything we can do temporarily to try and help them? speed signs, more patrolling, maybe
Yeah,
that's
so-
already happening, I don't know.
Again, this will be
Just-
part of the conversation. We have a whole bunch of data we've collected over a week period of time, and we could tell you how fast people are going at what time. And we will tell you that
Okay,
people are not doing crazy speeds. The highest speed we saw was 51 miles per hour between 9 and 10 o'clock at night. But most people, average is 30 to 32 miles per hour. So you're not seeing crazy, we're collecting data right now
okay.
with
So
the
a good,
speed
a
sign.
good data point, and maybe the officers are doing this, it would be go on Saturday morning and afternoon, where people are using Dual Creek Trailhead.
But again, what we're saying is
Well,
we're getting the data right now. So we know when we're gonna go patrol, potentially for those that might be
And I'm,
speeding.
and I'm just asking, maybe for a short-term temporary analysis, in addition to that is, let's find out, what happens if you put a patrol officer there on a nice Saturday morning.
We are doing that, and what they do is they do the speed limit, because it's like, well, there's a patrol car, and I slow down.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
I mean,
One
that's
other,
the
one other
challenge.
thing that we have not discussed,
the
but will
police
you at least
department
put it
has something
on
that's
when
there
we
all
do
the
talk
time.
about this is,
I know.
one of the
There it
issues,
is,
and
but
I
it's in
think
the
one of the
bottom, so
residents
when you
brought
have
it
to
up,
slow
is there's
down
no
anyway.
sidewalks. I'm not
So
sure
you're
they
already slowing down.
understand that the sidewalk becomes, it's kind of on the homeowner. So there is like a partial sidewalk on First South, because there are new homes there, but then there's also several areas where there's not.
We're happy to create a special improvement district to add sidewalks into their neighborhood.
Can-
I mean, that's
can you
how it
go
gets
back-
funded, right?
But, no,
But-
I'm asking, like, in Farmington, when they built the high school, all of those homeowners had to put in their sidewalks.
Right, and that's a special improvement district, where they have an
Okay,
assessment where
that's what
they
they did, and-
pay for.
And I don't want to derail it, Mike. you
Yeah,
don't
we're
need to
getting
be-
way off
I'm-
topic,
I'm
but-
happy for you to say whatever. I don't want to derail the budget conversation.
What we're saying is, it's
Speed
not in the
humps.
budget,
Okay.
but it can be added later, right? This is something that, but this is not, because we don't have firm idea what cost would be, or what direction, because
Or,
there's so many
yes,
ideas.
we don't
Yeah,
have,
yeah,
there's
yeah.
nothing to put in the
No.
budget because we don't know exactly what the,
Correct.
a possible right
So no,
answer is.
it's not in the budget.
And I
at
do
this time, but could be
appreciate
amended
the
later.
overall view, instead of reacting to one situation, the overall, being assertive in saying, maybe this is a policy change in how we handle some of these
And
roads.
I facetiously say 20, I don't know what it's gonna be, but we have to anticipate that
It
it's
won't
not
be
just
the only one,
street.
though.
I knew it was
And I'm
facetious,
different
Brad.
because this, and I'm different because of this, and I'm different because I have this, and,
Yeah.
and then we're creating some nuances that we didn't anticipate, so.
Okay, one quick statement. Thank you, Councilman. So we've bought the cloud, right, so we're monitoring the streets. So the first preliminary that we've got off of there, we did have a speed of 51 miles an hour, one person, late at night. Most of the speed, if I remember right, Grant can correct me, he's got a better memory than I do, but most of the speed was 30 to 35 miles an hour.
Are they clocking that based off the existing radar?
Is it with one we're
Device
using
there.
right now? We're getting more data. You know, I think what Brant's saying is right. Let us get our evidence, then let's talk about it.
Okay.
And I think, and the whole thing is all this stuff is really nice that we're buying and doing or want to do, but you guys all got to realize that there is a maintenance cost that comes with everything that you purchase. You know, the signs on Chase Lane, there's a maintenance cost that comes with that, and we have to remember, don't be surprised when our maintenance costs go up. I mean, it's $400 a year just so that we can monitor that on First South. So we're not doing nothing for those residents up there right now. We are moving forward, but we're gathering data. I've talked with several engineers when I went to road school. They gave me their opinions on it, and, you know, it's a big deal. I actually talked to the guy from Salt Lake City. So we're working on this, but I think, you know, stay to your budget right now and realize we are looking at it and we're watching it. But in my opinion, at this point, it's a policing action. Tickets have got to be written, and, you know, to Paul's point, how do you catch them? Well, the nice thing about this cloud report is it tells you what time of day you have your majority of your high speeders. So it's something that can be watched, so.
I appreciate staff looking at it from a data-driven
Well,
decision-making
that's-
process.
No, we
It
want to
just takes
consider it.
time.
You know, our default might be that maybe it's not going to work out, but we want to be open-minded to the possibility that it could be a solution for this street.
And I also like the data because it provides some report that you can give those residents on First South and say, here's all the data that we've collected. We know that there are one-off incidences But generally speaking, the data doesn't.
And that's all of our streets,
Bear it
right?
out.
There is that one-off instance. You know,
Correct, yeah.
it's funny, I mean, I drive 20 miles per hour on my road.
But I
in my
think it-
neighborhood. When
as a-
somebody's doing 25, it seems fast to me, right? Even if they're doing the speed limit in my own
Yes.
neighborhood, I'm like, there's kids, slow it down.
Yeah.
So there's just some
I'd just say,
perception.
like, a note to file, like, let's engage with that, depending on what the decision is.
We haven't
Or
dismissed their
regardless of what the decision is, I think it's just good practice to be engaged with those community members that have taken the time to.
Well, I agree, and I
Be
think, you
public
listen to what the
commenters.
residents have to say, and I think that's what we're all here for, right?
Yeah, we haven't
But
dismissed
just
their
realize one
concerns.
other thing on the speed sign, it's downhill traffic only, it's not uphill.
Yeah.
So that, you kind of got
Interesting.
something different, but we don't want to go buy another sign. I mean, Mark went to great lengths to move that over there, because he had to pull the one off of the one by Chase and move it over there because it wasn't compatible
Yeah.
to go up to the, so he spent a little bit of time just, moving the signs, so.
I agree with Spencer about the data. You probably remember this, but maybe it was last winter, it wasn't this winter, but somebody called and complained about a snowplow driving too fast, and he had me the speed exactly at that point,
Oh, yeah.
like
That's
5
cool.
minutes, which
Cool
was
data.
really nice, because they weren't driving too fast,
But it seemed fast for them.
it seemed fast because it's a big machine, and it was pushing like slush up onto the sidewalk.
Data's awesome, but it costs us money, right? I mean, that's what we have to
Yeah.
realize.
It was helpful, because
should
when I
say-
called them back, they were like, oh, okay, that all made sense, and then they were not mad anymore.
And we love the data because it helps, I mean, if somebody was going fast, then it's time to talk with somebody,
Right.
so.
Thanks.
Enough out of me, right? Okay.
All right. Our community services, I just wanted to note a few things here. The first, with the 4th of July celebration, we have 55 city allocated funds towards that. And then if the committee is able to raise any sponsorships or fundraising, that could be amended later. These other two I just want to touch on because they were new programs that we haven't had a chance to talk about much. The first is the concerts in the park. We have allocated in this budget $2,000 for it, and the neighborhood nights, which is $800 allocated towards that. And our transfers, this budget provides a transfer of just over $58,000 to our capital projects fund, and a transfer of $415,592 to our transportation fund. Again, that's from the general fund to the capital projects and to the transportation. All right, moving on to recreation. Haley and Bryce have made some significant progress in getting a balanced budget since our budget retreat. We want to talk about this more in detail at our next council meeting in a couple weeks. But just to give you a brief overview, proposed in this budget would be an increase, a fee increase to our non-residents of $5 to $10. And then they also eliminated the off-site instructors in our summer recreation. And they also eliminated completely the concessions. And again, I think the plan.
Yeah, there's going to need to be some further deliberation on each one of these.
So is that the concessions down at the ballpark?
Yeah.
So they're not gonna be open at all this summer?
This summer, they're not going to be, no.
I've had,
Well, I guess the question is, Robin, do you want to heavily subsidize?
no, I'm just saying I have had several people and I just said, well, I guess they're not open yet, because I didn't know, but I have had several people down there, mostly text, people saying, why aren't the concessions open? And I said, I think a third party's gonna take them over, we lost too much money. And they're like, how could you lose money on it? I'm like,
Just say, we'd love to have you as a concessionaire. Please come in.
Yes, please come and talk about
but, you know,
Every concession,
Taking RFP.
every concessions program I know
families
of
are
loses money.
frustrated because they're used to going down there
You
and
can
buying
also
their
tell them
kids
that the
all.
rec center shut down their concession and put it to a third party, and that third party didn't even make money.
Didn't
So
do it. I mean, they're like, I think a lot of people took their kids down there for hot dogs for dinner.
We'd
while
love
they-
them to go to In-N-Out and spend our money, or Chick-fil-A, or other fine establishment in Centerville and give us our sales taxes.
Are looking at
Lots of
it. We did
choices.
open it up,
Instead of losing money.
we did open it up for RFP and we had one submitter. And then there was some series of unfortunate events that happened, and so the person was not able to open up. And so, we know we've had some complaints. We've had some internal discussion about possibly doing, a food truck roundup night. I know that doesn't suffice the petty candy and things like that, but
We'll
we've
talk
talked
about this in
about
more
doing
detail
it
at the meeting,
different.
because I really feel like, I think eliminate concessions is just, we have alternatives to providing food or making food an option, and so we'll talk about that at the future meeting. Yeah.
Any questions on
We
those
just
other
need
ones?
Costco to come do their hot dogs.
Maybe they're losing money too.
Well,
They
they
are
lose money
losing
on
They
their,
absolutely are. The CEO has
But
made
they
that
are,
very
but they're
clear.
making it in another place.
It's a
exactly
lost
right.
leader to get people in.
I just want to be clear that the off-site instruction programs, we ran those last summer, but it was a very, very small amount of kids that participated in those programs, so it was not worthwhile to continue to run them. Specifically Mountain View Gymnastics, specifically RAW, specifically those types of programs,
Okay.
the dance, it wasn't worth the cost or the amount that we were putting into it. So that was one of the biggest things that we eliminated. And then the non-resident fee thing is something we use to offset some of the costs, so.
All right, moving on to our RAP tax fund. Again, we've kept our same historical distribution, where we transfer 85% of our RAP tax funds to the Parks Fund, 5% to the Whitaker Museum, and 5% to the Performing Arts Theater. We leave 5% of it in that fund for future projects to be determined. Looking at our Parks Fund, one change since our budget retreat, we had budgeted for an impact fee study. Originally, we had $35,000. We believe we can reduce that. So right now, we have budgeted $20,000 for that study. And you'll see in our other funds, we collect impact fees for parks, water, and drainage. And each of those funds will have the same $20,000.
and maybe even less than that, but we wanted to make sure we had enough buffer in there.
Nate, why is that total adding up to be the same as the previous budget amount on the line item? So the total expenditures, even though it went down by.
Because it's the park fund and it has to balance?
No, just the line item. I know it has to balance, but it was 555 in the budget retreat, and it's 555 in this report, and yet we've subtracted 15 grand out. Just check that math.
Yeah, I think that's probably, good catch. That's probably a formula error, so it's not catching
Okay.
that 25,000. I bet if you added up that 129,405, yeah.
Good job.
Dang it.
Sorry, numbers.
No,
nerd.
now you get a
Oh.
gold star, you just caught Nate in a mistake, and
I am not looking to catch Nate. Nate does a fantastic job.
he does, and this is why this is a big moment.
And it's on YouTube.
Grant lives for
Grant
this.
might bring this up again. I'm not
Oh,
sure.
that was
but-
not
Hard to
either.
find these, so good job.
Grant's gonna give you a gift card later.
And had a really quick answer, though, that wasn't right.
I defaulted to, like, of course Nate did it right. So,
So what you will
That
most
was my
likely,
favorite part. Was, no, Nate's right.
so what you'll most likely
Spencer could
see
not be right.
is that item number 2 under capital projects to be determined.
Yep.
That will most likely drop down to 69,000.
should follow.
Is where that will balance out.
Well, you'll figure it out, but
Yeah.
subtracting that from that wouldn't be the answer.
Okay, I'll figure it out.
Yep.
Couple other items to note here. The one project that we do have planned and budgeted, 40,000 for the community park parking lot expansion. That's on the west side of the park. And then we also have our lease payment for the Island View Park, which, just to note, we have the fiscal year 25 payment that we're looking at now, and then we'll have a fiscal year 26, and that will be our final payment.
And I think our last review is we still hadn't heard on the grant for the pickleball courts, correct?
I just asked Bruce yesterday, and no, we have not heard yet.
Okay.
So with knowing that, if you want me, if you're okay, more than likely this is going to need to be changed for next year, because I highly doubt we're going to get this constructed before the end of this fiscal year. So currently in the budget, we don't have anything in there. We didn't, yeah, so we didn't add it in yet. So we'll probably, by the final budget, we'll have numbers in there for next year's budget for the pickleball courts. Because we won't be spending it this year.
Right. So you don't think we'll get the pickleball courts this year?
Not in this fiscal year.
Not in this fiscal year.
And not by 4th of July.
How about June 30th?
What I think, Brandon, is what you're saying is it will stay in the current budget we're talking about.
We'll roll it over into this one.
Yeah,
Yes.
we're gonna, yeah.
No, because you just saved it in this fiscal year. It'll be a budget amendment for this current fiscal year, and then it will be as part of this,
Be reallocated for
the,
next year.
the 2025 fiscal year budget.
Correct.
Yeah, so any work that's performed during this fiscal year will get
Yes.
expensed in the current fiscal year.
Yeah.
Anything that's not completed by June 30th,
We'll realize a savings in this current fiscal year in that.
correct. And so that goes for the pickleball courts and the community park playground, which are being tied up in the
Yeah,
same
in the
grant.
same grant.
And then we also have the Smith Park expansion area outside here that is most likely not gonna get done by June 30th. So we may be looking at allocating funds next year for that as well. But again, as Brant said, hopefully we'll have better answers when we have the public hearing for the final budget.
Which will be the same for the playground equipment as well, since that's being held up by the grant.
Okay, in our capital projects fund, as I noted earlier, we have a just over $58,000 transfer from the general fund, and we are using $496,000 of fund balance, which is normal for this type of fund. So I don't think it's anything to be alarmed of, just wanted to make note. I didn't list any of the specific equipments that we're planning on purchasing out of here. I'll let you refer to your budget.
But there was a change because we were able to get this international in this fiscal year, is that why?
Correct.
It's
We were
now
able to get
63?
the cab and chassis, but not the body.
Right, so it's 63 for, instead of 145, we just kind of swapped years.
Correct. And then not,
You were referring to this current fiscal year, is that right? We just swapped it.
When we did our budget review is 145,000.
Yes, yes.
But we were able to approve that
yeah, we,
Okay,
last meeting or the meeting before, and so we've taken it out of what
okay.
we had reviewed back in March, subtracted out because it will be going in this fiscal year as opposed to 2025's fiscal year now.
Yes,
So I have a
okay.
weird question. Was this online for people to see before tonight, or
No.
just us?
just us. So this is the
So this will
presentation.
go on tomorrow for people to be able to see?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. So I'll put it on our website, on the finance page, and then we'll also have the physical copy here if people want to come in.
So, so we'll approve a tentative budget, and boom, and it's always that way, right? And that's when it goes online.
Right.
For them to look between now and June 4th, for when there's a final budget hearing.
Okay.
So the public can submit comments to Jennifer. We'll have the second meeting in May that they could comment on just during the regular public comment portion of the meeting. And then we'll also hold a public hearing on June 4th, instead of the first meeting in June. So yeah, the public will have an opportunity to review and submit comments if they'd like. Along these in the capital projects fund, we don't have anything budgeted for these two items, but there has been some recent discussion, so I just wanted to bring it up. Staff's currently looking into getting vehicles for admin, City Hall, and also replacing the vehicle at community development. Right now, Whitney can speak more to the community development, but it's a old two-wheel drive truck that is a little bit difficult to get places that she needs to get to post her public notices.
So it was part of the original request, and it's trying to save some money for this budget based on what we had, that 1.3 million. We cut those two vehicles out, but we are experiencing costly repairs. Admin vehicle is the leftover police department vehicles, and they're already pretty beat up, and we've gone through quite a bit of repairs on the Explorer, and community developments is
So what do we
pretty
use the
rushed.
admin vehicle for?
Admin vehicle for a lot, so any of the admin personnel use it. Bryce will use it to go to conferences or anything around here. Haley will use it quite often. What, pick up dinner? So, it's you, but it's a pool vehicle that any admin personnel
As opposed to
can use.
having,
share it
as
around,
opposed
check it
to
out.
staff reimbursing for mileage.
Correct.
That's the trade-off.
Correct.
Okay. So then what do we use the truck for community development?
So for community development, I use it to post all of the public notices signs. We use it to go look at enforcements. We would take it to conferences, but it probably wouldn't make it to St. George or Cedar City. There's only 2 seats, so our whole department can't go anywhere together. But mostly just for posting signs and doing enforcement.
So it's a true one-time expense that, again, 5 years, we can make them last. So that's not in the budget, but it's something I really have been struggling with that maybe we'd like to
So
consider adding.
it would
that in.
come out of this capital projects fund, but it's not there today.
It's not in there now.
Okay.
So one is a truck and one's the one of the old Explorers from the,
And you want brand-new vehicles for them?
Yes, but I mean, with state contract, you get really.
right, I was
decent
just gonna
deals
say,
on
you'd
them,
probably
so-
implement the same procedures that Mike has done on Public Works.
Yeah.
Where
Yep.
maybe you might consider rotating them through, resell, and it's really not a significant hit. The question is,
Right.
what type of vehicle makes the most sense for those?
That is the question, right? F-150s tend to be best value, particularly on the return. SUVs go pretty far. Explorers are still not a bad vehicle, but these are conversations we have not had
Okay.
with what that vehicle might be.
What do you do when the pool vehicle is in use? Do people wait, or then do you pay mileage, I'm assuming, if somebody needs to go and it's already in?
Yeah, I feel like there's some responsibility for us to provide a vehicle. If somebody's personal vehicle, they don't want to use it, I do feel there is some responsibility we have to make something available, that if they do want to take it down to St. George and not their own POV, it's an option, and it could be there as an option. I don't think we've ever had conflict with those vehicles, but there's other pool vehicles we can keep, the really, really bad ones.
I was just
Just in case
curious.
backups.
I was just curious what happened if it was. I agree that it's nice to have a vehicle to be able to be
We've
used.
tried to make it work. I mean, admin vehicle, the SUV, we've had every year, and we make it work, but it really is. We had to replace the air conditioner, the brakes, and it's just getting costly. It would almost be cheaper just to take that loss of $5,000 a year for 5 years than it is to spend $8,000 in repairs every year.
Correct,
So-
exactly.
Yeah.
Just another perspective, like community services doesn't have a way to haul baseball equipment from point A to point B. Having an F-150 would be able to do that a lot more efficiently and doing community events and things like that, rather than Haley using her own personal vehicle, which is a pretty small
Yeah.
vehicle.
Well,
So-
that's why I was just thinking, like, in some cases, to your point, Whitney, if you needed to go to a conference where it's more than 2 people in a truck, you could take the Explorer and the truck could be around for community services or whatever else might be, where you might be throwing stuff in the bed of the truck.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything else there on capital projects fund? We'll move on to the transportation. We've changed how we're budgeting a little bit in our transportation fund. So previously, we budgeted everything in our capital projects line as a lump sum. We want to experiment with this, breaking it out into the individual projects. So you'll see that we have 2 projects budgeted for fiscal year '25. That's Briarwood Drive street rebuild and 1250 North street rebuild. Those are $420,000 each. And we've also broken out our overlay, our crack seal projects, and our slurry seal projects.
Nate, my guess is that your engineering, your construction line items are reversed. It doesn't change the number. Oh, yeah. It doesn't change the a number, but my guess is construction is more expensive than the
More than
engineering.
engineering, come on.
I can hear Kyle Green now just saying, I can't believe you'd spend $350,000 on engineering fees.
Thank you, good catch again. And then, as we mentioned earlier, we have allocated $125,000 for sidewalk repair and active transportation. And then you also note that we have a contribution to fund balance of $87,592. So generally, we try to schedule our road rebuild projects in conjunction with our water lines and our storm drain replacements. As staff, we've discussed kind of taking a break for a year in all of these funds to allow our fund balances to build a little bit, some of these bigger projects that we have coming. So we feel like this will be able to help us accomplish our projects that we have on hand for this next fiscal year, while also allowing us to build that fund balance for future use.
So effectively, 328 of the overall transfer goes to actual improvements, and the remainder, which is that 87,592, is just to shore up the balance. Okay. And that the actual rebuild, because the original capital project was like 852,000, and now it's like 840,000. Is that just a revision on Kevin estimating the cost of those projects?
Probably.
Okay.
In our, in our water fund, included in this budget is a proposed rate increase of 4%. That would provide just over $151,000 in additional revenue. Note that our last rate increase went into effect the last part of June of 2022. Again, as you saw in the Parks Fund, this budget does include a $20,000 for the impact fee study. The big project that we have planned in our water fund is the Oak Ridge Drive Reservoir. Right now, we have budgeted $2 million, and I really hope it stays there. But we'll find out this fall as we go out to bid. I also want to note that we have been awarded a grant that will cover $1.5 million of that cost. So essentially our net, we're estimating to be $500,000 out of pocket. And again, as we just discussed, we have some big projects coming in our water fund. Yesterday, we were notified that we were denied a grant for the drilling of a new well. That's a $3 million project and would have provided $1.5 million for us. We didn't get it.
Is this a federal grant, Water Smart? Which, do you know which one? Oh, okay, the drought.
This was kind of your shooting for the stars grant? Yeah, okay.
Thank you for shooting for the stars.
Yeah, I mean.
Sometimes it works out, you know?
Yeah.
So.
So when we were putting this budget together, we were obviously hopeful that we would get it, so we knew we needed to start storing money away for that. But we also have other projects besides that. Like we were planning on doing Peachtree this spring, replacing Peachtree Drive's water line. We haven't done that yet. So this contribution to fund balance would really help us build our reserves that were getting depleted to help us complete some of these bigger projects that we knew we had coming down in future years.
So Peachtree was supposed to be done this fiscal year?
That was the plan.
Starting this fiscal year.
Starting this fiscal year, okay. But we're not doing that.
No, we didn't have, it was mainly a drainage issue. We didn't have the funding to complete the drainage portion of it. And then we also, the water side probably could have got by, but we also knew that if we got this grant, we'd have potentially a well coming. So we decided, I think it was Dual Creek we were basing in that area. They had replaced their lines, so we did have to do some patching. And we'll readdress our side of things in a future year.
Is there light at the end of the paperwork tunnel on green steel tank funding?
No.
Okay,
It's absolutely insane.
okay.
I was deleted for having inactive account after 4 days. Tell me how that happens. So Mike and I have to get together and figure out how to recreate my account, even though I'm head of organization.
Stars.
Oh, it's absolutely insane. So Mike and I we're gonna get together and figure out how to get his password, since he's gotta do forget password. And then recreate the organization and then add Nate back as the finance person. It's
Well,
absolutely
I can
unreal.
still get on, so I'm good.
Well, you're on, but you're part of a organization, but you're not part of, like, the organization.
But again, it is a reimbursable grant though, so we will have to front the money and then submit for reimbursement. So
typically how
yeah,
they
we
are.
have been awarded the funds. We have the letter of award, but once we start spending that, we'll
We
get.
have to take something out of the city council's,
Free money.
we may have to take something out of the city council's, contingency special, just to treat everybody to a special dinner, once it gets funded.
Yeah.
Trip to Hawaii, sounds great.
No, sorry, that won't be in our budget, but maybe something different.
He's thinking
special.
dinner.
No, I mean, but
Chocolate
ultimately,
almonds over here for you, Brant.
we're still 1.5 million in federal funding. It's worth the headache, I'll be honest
Absolutely.
with you.
So
Absolutely.
that's why
it's
I'm
worth it.
saying
So
thank you, but,
it's frustrating, but we'll get there.
okay.
3 million would be better.
3 million would be better. We're not.
Of course
not
it would.
greedy.
All right, on to our sanitation fund. Just a couple of things to note here, that our ACE disposal had a contractual increase based on CPI, and that was 3.3%. So that affects our green waste collection, our collection, which is our black cans, and then our recycling collection accounts. That increased about $14,000 between those three. Also included in this budget is $10,000 for glass recycling. I know we're still in the early stages of developing that program.
Yeah, so Mike and I did meet, so we'll have this conversation maybe at the next meeting. It's proven to me a lot more work than it may be of a benefit if we take a different approach versus a one drop-off location. So there's options. We're not letting go of the idea of finding some way to offer glass recycling, but it's going to be extremely costly and the benefit may not prove.
So when are you gonna bring that to us to discuss?
Next meeting, I mean, we could, it just depends. We have quite a number of items on the next meeting, but yes, it's coming. The hope is next meeting. Spencer's like, he's like, tell me next meeting.
Next
I'm
meeting.
good.
It's another one of those things, let's just get it resolved.
Well, it's gonna create more challenges, but yes. Okay, Mike, we're ready, 21st. We'll start work session at 4:30.
Perfect.
And we will knock it out.
I also wanted to note in this fund that there's not a proposed rate increase this year. We'll be able to absorb these increases into our existing budget, but also note that our contract with ACE expires in fiscal year '25, so we'll be going out for RFP as we get closer.
Remind us, how many options do we have for disposal RFPs, like subcontractors?
Usually 3, it's pretty,
Okay, good.
yeah, so Robinson, Waste Management, ACE,
Is it Momentum?
Republican Services.
Oh, yeah, Republic.
Republic, yep, so there's
Oh,
Republic.
Good,
So
okay.
4.
So we at least have competition.
Yep.
Okay.
And then finally, our drainage fund. Right now in this fund, we have a proposed rate increase, essentially doubling the rate. There is staff discussion on maybe adjusting this. As we know, we recently completed our master plan, and depending on how long we space out that plan, it calls for between $850,000 to $1.2 million per year in capital projects. But there's still a lot of discussion going on internally about this proposed rate increase. I don't know if you have anything to add.
Yeah, so thanks Nate. So, I mean, I've struggled with this, and I'm sure many of you have also struggled with the doubling of our drainage rate. Our drainage rate is arguably right now one of the highest in the area already, even for this doubling. And it's not to say that it's not worth it, because we do have a really good drainage system, and it costs money, as Mike talked about, to upkeep or maintain or improve that system. So our capital facilities plan is very thorough, and it's great to identify all these projects that we could do and put things underground, get it off the street and pipe it. But there's also some level of anticipating some cost with UDOT or the county and seed money. And I guess me personally, I'm speaking on my behalf, and hopefully Mike won't get mad at me, but I feel like anticipating those is one thing, but I don't necessarily want to put the burden on our residents right now with not knowing if UDOT or Davis County are going to pick up those projects. I don't want to collect money from them now, knowing that there's potentially other revenue sources later. Again, the drawback is you're not creating that nest egg or the reserve when those projects do happen, which might require us to bond. But if we have to bond, then you actually can tie in a rate increase to the actual amount that we need to pay back a bond. So I think there's the ability of us looking at a rate increase of less than that, 30 to 50%, taking another year to see where UDOT will take on some of these projects, particularly I-15 widening. And we have potentially another increase next year of 30, 50%, and we go that route. I haven't had a chance to sit down with Mike and Kevin about this officially. I mean, we've talked about it over the phone, but I think a huge increase like this is a lot for a resident to take on. I mean, we're talking about potentially $100 a year increase, which is equivalent to a 30% property tax increase, right? Somewhere in that area. So if you look at it in that terms, that's a lot of money.
When you say a 30% property tax increase.
It's equivalent.
Equivalent to.
So if you raised, if you
Property
asked a
tax is
household
30%.
for an extra $100 a year, that's what it would.
Yeah, so I'm just,
Brand's saying.
Because $100 a year is not 30% of my property taxes.
but if you look at your
Your
city,
city property.
look at your city
tax.
portion.
City.
Yeah.
Your city portion's probably around $300,
Yeah.
$400.
Yep, yeah.
And Brant, I would, maybe for the
That's a good
council's
point.
benefit, I remember when we were in a spirited primary and general election and canvassing residents, I was actually surprised, and it was refreshing to hear that many of them were, from a policy standpoint, more against bonding and saying, hey, I'm happy to pay more in property tax or in fees than I am to pay interest. Essentially, instead of going out to bond and paying interest, I'd rather that I pay more in a cash, pay as we go type of situation. That's a policy discussion we can have, and I don't discredit,
Not disagreeing with
I'm
you.
torn on that,
You know I don't like paying interest. I've shared that repeatedly, that we do a
Right,
great
but we
job.
also,
However,
and we also buy our homes and get a mortgage, so, there are some things where you have to go into debt for.
but some of these
I understand that.
projects aren't a guarantee we are gonna be responsible for, and
Right,
that's
and that's
the,
where I agree with that assessment, Brant, is,
Yeah.
we're trying to, and I'm just saying,
Waiting to
maybe there's
hear.
a meld of that into, I just don't want us to make a decision where we're only gonna do some of it now and lose sight of the fact that really we have a larger obligation long-term, so it's almost like it's a 2 or 3-part decision, even though you've made the first part of the decision.
and what Mike and I have also discussed is that we have these other obligations. We're gonna have a doubling in our rates in our Weber Basin water by 2028. And so we're looking at our funds. Do we prioritize water over, or if you had to pick today, do you prioritize water over drainage? And I would say, well, yes, we do.
Right.
But what I'm saying is we have some great, in our capital facilities plan, I think they're great, and Kevin did an awesome job. But I don't want to increase rates on a hypothetical.
I don't have a problem with anything you're saying. I do want to say just a couple of things. We're not doing the peach tree stuff because we don't have the drainage funding, correct?
Yes,
So I do want to see some kind of increase.
absolutely. Well, we
And-
still want to keep we still want to keep that extra employee as well, because I think
Right.
you've heard from
And
the work that's done.
yes,
Mhm.
and then the other thing, along with Spencer's thoughts on, that people didn't necessarily want to go in debt. Another thing that really surprised me,
same election cycle. One of the things that really surprised me during that election cycle was the support that people, I really did think when I ran and said I'm gonna run on, like, making sure that we're getting our infrastructure where it needs to be, because not that that's a problem in Centerville as much, but nationwide it is a huge problem, that they're not, cities and towns typically are not funding what they need to replace infrastructure. It's hard when it's under the ground. But there were a lot of people that really resonated with that and were like, no, you're right, we gotta, like that. In fact, I had people coming to me, and before I'd even tell them what I thought was important, they were saying that. So I do want to be responsible in that way, that yes, even if we are, let's not kill our residents with increases, but let's also make sure that we are putting that funding aside, because that water rate increase is helping to fund that 500,000 that we need for that tank. I mean, it's a balance, but.
And that's why I said 25 to 50%, right? Even if it's over 2 year. Historically, not just in Centerville, but many cities I've been a part of, even with a 30% increase in water, you do it over 3 years. And here we are talking about a doubling of one rate.
And isn't that what the sewer district did, essentially?
But I feel like there is also fatigue when you keep, like, every year it's another 30%. Like
Fatigue and acceptance at the same time, right?
Is
There's
it?
some
Like, I
level
feel
of anticipating. School district, when's the last time you attended a school district property tax increase meeting, even though they happen every year? So anyway, Mike's up. I don't want to, Mike could counter what I'm saying.
Kind of support what you're saying is, we've got the grant in for the 3 new culverts to get them underneath the freeway. If we get those grants, then you can help balance it out. Last weekend went fishing with my son up to Flaming Gorge, and I was with the guy that takes care of the water system and sewage system in Dutch John, and their water bill is $82 base, and they get 12,000 gallons with that. And so the theory that I started thinking about is, we can't always just say, compared to here, like us, and we go, okay, $82. But what it takes is, how many residents do you have to share the cost and the burden? And I think that's something I learned is going forward with the water rate increase I want to look at next year, which is based off of if you use irrigation water, a few other things, but its bottom line is, how many residents do you have paying for it? What's a fair share? And I've learned that not all water rates are created equal. I mean, you have to look at what your residents are, along with the cost of doing it. Obviously, in Dutch John, they complain about it, but that's what the cost is. I mean, they don't have nothing to work on. I was surprised that it was 0 to 12,000 they get with that. But, when you're in a smaller community, you end up paying more money. And that's, when I look at the water rates, it's going to help me a little bit more of seeing that kind of stuff. And same thing with the drainage. It's the same theory. How many residents do you have? If we ended up with 100,000 more residents, heaven forbid, just throwing that out, what would the cost have to be? It would be less, right? So it's, I think, I like how Brant does it. We look at these kind of things, and, it's like the grant, going and asking our residents for $1.5 million for the reservoir. It's nice we don't have to ask them for that. If we could have done it 2 years ago like we wanted to, our cost would have been about what we wanted to do, and it's a learning curve. We asked for more money than they'll, at the time, it is the best, but anyway.
Water is free, infrastructure is not, right?
Right, yep.
So, anyway, so just, again, some consideration, in the budget currently has a 100% drainage utility fee rate increase. Again, that's up to you to decide if that should be adjusted. It doesn't need to be decided tonight. We can have a follow-up meeting.
And I think for the context of the council going forward is, let's not lose sight of the fact we'll probably have a transportation utility fee potentially next year, in addition to what we already talked about. And then what happens with our sales tax base? Does it stay stagnant? If it stays stagnant, and yet our services or other costs increase, then you're looking at least at a 2.5–3% increase on your property tax. So that's always the challenge, and I've seen it now at different agencies where well, I don't want to be the one that increases because there's so many other increases, and then you just fall behind and you,
Right.
and then put in a terrible spot. We want to use our, our revenue dollars efficiently, but I think we can't get so focused on, well, just the drainage fund, which I appreciate staff looking at, because with consideration to a transportation utility and other, if you're gonna kick the can, no, I'm not gonna, kick the can's the wrong word, but if you're going to separate into 2 or 3 increases the drainage fee, then you're gonna have a drainage fee, transportation, and some others that we frankly have to do if we're gonna maintain our infrastructure.
Well, I like what Brant's saying as far as we've got all of money to match a whole lot of things in there. Well, we might get some of them, but chances that we're gonna get all of them aren't gonna happen. I mean, we're not gonna get 100%. We've put 100% money in there to match them all, but realistically, we're gonna be really lucky if we get half of them. And I did find something, I was getting my stuff ready for the shredder the other day, and I had my 2019 water bill, and it was $54 for the month, and it's now $93 for the month. And I thought, wow, that's almost doubled. And people's wages haven't almost doubled, and that's our city water bill. Water, drainage, everything.
Right.
I was surprised that we kind of do it as a $5 isn't gonna hurt anybody. Well, $8 isn't gonna hurt anybody, but I thought, we've doubled, and people's wages haven't doubled. Social Security hasn't doubled in 5 years.
Right, but still, along with that, I think that you have to consider that perhaps the water rates were significantly lower. You have to also look at what is the modified adjusted gross income for Centerville. That's how you determine affordability. Just because it's doubled, I agree that that hasn't happened, but were we just charging maybe not quite as much as we should have? I mean, if you consider what happened on January 2nd of 2022, we had a big water line break on Chase Lane, and that was somewhat of a maintenance issue Mike then got some funding and went in and replaced all of those other valves that were the same age and had several others that could have also been, it doesn't take long that if you haven't reserved and put aside the money, you don't have the
Well,
funding.
I agree. Like I said, I was just saying that I was really surprised that we had upped as much as we had. I think, and
I'm not out to get more money out of people than they haven't. I actually have some questions about this when we're done with Nate's presentation because I am concerned about our residents, but I also, you can't, if you're fixing roads because of catastrophic issues,
Right.
we haven't saved any.
I agree with
we
that,
made a
but I'm just
mistake.
saying, I don't know that we need 100%. We could maybe drop back to
I'm
50
fine.
or 40%.
I am totally fine with that discussion.
With that, but I just thought that was an interesting, like I said, I was just
Yeah.
kind of surprised because I've been on the council that whole time.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking, well, you did this, lady, so, it was an interesting side note to me that we had raised it.
Sorry, keep going. I didn't
No,
mean to.
no, that was just, we were running unbalanced budgets back there. Had we had more money, would we have had that repaired, or would we have used the money to repair something else? I don't know that we would have fixed that on Chase Lane, because did we know that it was a problem?
We're always gonna have some.
We're always gonna have
There's always gonna be
something.
something that is catastrophic that we can't anticipate for sure. But I do think that, when I talked with Mike later on, and don't let me put words in your mouth, Mike, but it seemed like they were able to go out and check some of the other, screws in the valves that were the same age. And
Right, and
we-
they
Mike,
did that.
will you raise your hand if we fix all the valves? We haven't fixed them all yet then?
I just think it's important to remember that, it doesn't help, we don't help the city if we end up
Right,
having
if it
too
costs
many
us more.
I
catastrophic
think what you're
projects.
getting back is just similar to the conversation about vehicles for admin.
Right,
If you're spending $8,000 on repairs, but you could be spending or depreciating at $5,000 or a $5,000 loss per year, which one are you gonna choose?
yeah,
You're gonna choose the 5,000, not the $8,000 in repairs.
right.
So your point is preventative maintenance
For sure.
and allocating dollars.
And just saying that along with that, yes, maybe the water rates did go up a lot, but maybe we were just, it probably maybe was time, because I looked into it when we did that 2 years ago. I did all of the studies I would have done had I been still working at Water Resources for a loan, and we were well under the modified adjusted gross income affordability rate for water.
And from, sorry, being the math nerd that I am, but if you were at, say, $54 in 2019, what were your last 7 years? Were they also at $54 and there was a doubling? So it wasn't a doubling really over a period of 3-4 years. It was we got so far behind that there had to be that doubling when, if you take it over that longer period of time as opposed to just that snapshot of time, you would say, oh, okay, that's why it doubled. It wasn't because it just doubled in 3 years. I don't know the answer to that.
Right, and like I said, it was just 5 years, and I was surprised. Being on the council, I was still surprised, because I knew we'd raised it, but I just hadn't paid that much attention.
I mean, I'm not sure what bill you were looking at per
Just my
se.
city monthly bill
But-
that I pay every
But I
month.
have checked it since we did at least the rate increase that, when we were all on the council. And it went at the amount that we said,
Oh,
the
I
$7 or
agree with that. I'm
$8.
just saying it's water and it's garbage and it's everything. That's just my monthly bill that I pay the city every
Got ya.
month. So it was just, I was shredding that bill that the city had sent me in 2019, and it was $54, and the one I was paying that day was $92.
I think, if you don't mind me stepping in, but I think the big problem is, I've said way too much tonight, but the big problem that you're gonna see, and it'll be after I'm gone, but the problem that you're gonna see is irrigation water is gonna get so costly that your culinary water, everybody's gonna wanna be jumping on it. We're having people talk about it now. And so how do you make ordinances and everything else, but it doesn't stop people from trying to do it.
And I've had people say that to me.
That's gonna
We
be
need
your
a
problem.
progressive rate block structure.
Okay, so that's,
Exactly.
I know that we're talking still budget, but what Mike was saying a little bit, and the thing that me and Mike have discussed is, there's gotta be a tiered structure, and that tiered structure doesn't go up linearly.
No.
It goes up.
It's logarithmic more.
Yes, it is
Yeah.
more, or exponential. I'm not sure
Yeah,
which one we're gonna use.
You're right.
But, yes, there is a level at which, yes, generally, if we all use the same amount of water, we should all be paying generally the same. If you are a heavy water user, you should expect, I don't wanna use the word penalized, but there should be a measure by which it costs a lot more because you're using excessive amounts. And so that tiered structure, I think, needs to get in place, and I think you're working on that, Mike.
Well, it is, but what you're seeing is Centerville was smart. Back in 1989, they jumped on, they got an infrastructure repair bill. So we were fixing stuff. We were scoring big time when, because we had the funds to keep going and we could get contractors doing it cheap. It's changed a little bit now. But the whole thing is Centerville did their infrastructure, which was saving the taxpayers how many hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? Now you're having Weber Basin come in doubling your fees, right? So why is that happening? It's infrastructure. So everything is infrastructure that's going on, and so how do you keep up? I think you have to keep up with fixing the bonnets, before they blow off. You need to be out being productive in what you do. And what will be, I think, if I was to put out, I'll probably be wrong, but if it long term, probably after 28, I think you're gonna see the water rates level off. And I think, that's what I personally think is gonna happen, because I know Weaver Basin's gonna be backing off. Bill Creek may not, because they're so far behind. I guess I shouldn't be judging them. But they have a lot of work to do. Weaver Basin is getting close to being out of town as far as major repairs that we would like to see them do. But they still got humongous lines. You've been up Weaver Canyon the last 2 weeks, you've seen the cost of a project that's huge and getting more water to the treatment plant and everything down this way. So infrastructure is what's driving the cost of your water bills right now, in my opinion. But I'm just a water guy, I don't know much about stuff, but anyhow, that's my 2 cents worth. I'm not coming back up.
It depends on what his stopwatch says.
Gina, bonnets was the word you were probably looking for.
Yes, yeah, for sure. And I should clarify also, it's an inclining block rate structure that you're talking about,
Thank you.
so.
I don't want to belabor this much longer. Is there a recommendation on a number you'd like us to add for final budget, or do you want to have a future conversation about this, time to think about this and have that at an upcoming meeting?
Upcoming meeting.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think this is a lot to take in, so
Yeah.
we'll discuss this at the 21st meeting. Great, thank you.
You always build this into your presentations, don't you? Right?
Yeah, I did. Also requested in the drainage fund is one additional full-time employee, as Brent mentioned. Just to throw a plug in there, if you look at his budget message, it talks about the work that our drainage does. Since 1999, we've had one employee. Our employee is in charge of over 1,400 manholes, 973 catch basins, 29 miles of storm drain, 18 miles of subdrain, 1 mile of culvert, 1 mile of swell, 5 miles of open ditches, and 133 outfalls. And then you add in all the state and federal regulation that's come on since 1999. It's a lot for one person. So they are requesting an additional full-time employee to assist in that workload. You also
Hey,
notice.
sorry, just one last, there's, on the professional services, it went down by 15 grand. Part of that was for the impact fee study, correct?
That's why it went down, yeah.
So where did that money get reallocated to? Because we're still doing the impact fee study, no?
Yes, so we still have the impact fee study of 20,000. So where that would have been adjusted is that contribution to fund balance for future year projects. So yeah, we do have a considerable contribution to fund balance to help build those reserves. Mike mentioned that we're applying for a grant to help us out with some culvert replacements under I-15 that will be a costly repair for a costly project. So we're trying to, again, minimize our current projects, which the only one we have now slated for this year is the 1250 North storm drain replacement. Obviously, if we go less than doubling of the rate, then that contribution to fund balance will also decrease based on that amount. And then the only, kind of going backwards, but the only other new account that they've added is that system maintenance and repairs, which is similar to what we did in the water fund. It just gives them $20,000 to maintain the lines as they see fit. So that about wraps up the presentation of the tentative budget. Again, I just want to thank council and staff for all the work that they've put into this. I feel like we have a very good working relationship among us, which a lot of other cities don't have. So I'm very grateful for that. And then, again, our recommendation is to adopt this proposed budget as the tentative budget and set the public hearing for the final budget for June 4th at 7 p.m. Again, keeping in mind that, as we discussed, we may not all agree on all the details of this budget, but we can amend it before we adopt a final budget.
Thanks, Nate. While he's up, any further questions from Nate?
I just have a couple of comments, if that's,
You bet.
so you had your first couple of slides in, I think you had highlights, and you just had pointed out the COLA and the merit total of 5.6%. I mean, I know it's calculated slightly different than that, but 3.6 on a COLA, merit of 2%. Councilman Summerhays mentioned during our budget retreat that the merit maybe feels like it's a little bit unsustainable. The American Consulting Engineers Council of Utah met today in a conference, and they mentioned that seems like the increase in salaries this year is about 5 to 6%. I'm just wondering if it doesn't make some sense to just do a COLA and maybe not do the merit this year. I know sometimes when I worked at the state of Utah, they just didn't do the merit. It keeps your employees at the same increase, but it doesn't move them up in the category that they're in. So I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that. It's just a thought. I'm not necessarily saying I'm, for it. Just a thought.
Are you recommending, not recommending, stating just 3.6% and not?
No,
But so-
no, the total, the 3.6 plus
So you're
the
saying the
2.
5.6 per employee and recognizing as labor
I'm
market
just
difference?
saying, like, it seems like, I guess what I'm saying is generally speaking, in the private sector, they're saying 5 to 6%. We heard the same thing with the state, and so I'm saying instead of moving them up in their category, just saying, we're gonna do a 5.6% or whatever that.
There's value to be said, in what you're proposing, but again, I think there's some opportunity for department heads to reward those higher performers.
Okay,
By saying, I'm gonna give you 2.5%, this person gets 1.5%.
gives them a little leeway, okay.
Again, it's not, the 2% is a benchmark, and I want to make sure the employees perfectly know, it's not necessarily a knock on who you are, per se, but it's just you'll have so much funding to prioritize, and you do want to make sure you have this opportunity to reward those high performers and have the tough conversation with potentially those low performers.
Sure.
Right? And that's why I think the merit is there. The 2% merit actually is relative, I shouldn't say relatively low. It is, I'd say it's on average with what other cities do. Some have a higher merit, so a little bit more money, between 1 to 5% is what they do. So 2% is kind of on the lower end. But it's
I
just
agree, it
something to
is on
work
the
with.
lower end. It is something that is not necessarily dealt with as much in the private sector. I mean, you have to just get promoted to get.
Oh, yeah, my wife, I mean, the funny thing is, my wife, when we first got married, she's like, why don't you just go in and ask for a raise from your boss? I'm working in Yuma, Arizona. I'm like, that's not the way government works. She's like, well, you're doing all this, just go ask for a raise. And I'm like, that's not the way that's.
Yeah, it is different.
But
So
she would
I
go
don't-
in and get $1 raise every time she asked her boss for more money. It's like,
Yeah.
that's great, but no.
And
Right.
Gina, my point in the
Not the way it
budget
works.
retreat wasn't a dispute or even a conversation about whether you do merit or not. My,
And I'm sorry, I apologize if I misinterpreted.
no, that's
what-
okay.
yeah.
My concern was that the merit and the COLA was the new basis for the next year's pay, for which then that COLA and that merit is based off of. So the compounding effect is vastly
Yes.
different than to say, great, you get a COLA increase, and then department heads can figure out how to divvy out the merit, but your next year's COLA increase is not based off of the COLA plus the merit, it's based off of
Both of them.
the COLA. No,
No,
it's
just the
just the
COLA.
COLA, exactly.
Okay.
That was what
Okay.
I was getting at.
Okay, well, and like I said, I don't have an issue with it, more the point I'm trying to make is, hey, I think that this COLA plus this merit is in keeping, we've talked about it, and I just am saying, there's one more data point that this is probably the correct range to be in this year.
And I appreciate what, Brant made a good retort back, and that was, hey, look, our goal is always to be about 60-ish%
Yeah,
of where pay is at across like-kind
Yeah.
municipalities. And I think that's a good place for us to be generally. Question is if other council members or finance compounding interest nerds like me and see this as, wait a second, at some point, you'll have private sector people saying, boy, I can get paid more in the public sector. Whether that's true or not, Brad says there's no chance
that happens.
that happens, exactly.
No, it did happen at some point with engineering, because we were having a really hard
Yes,
time
and
keeping.
you also brought that point at the same
Yeah.
time. So
Yeah.
I'm just
It
laying it
can
out
happen.
there that mathematically, again, I will state, just as I did in late March, mathematically, that procedure doesn't, I think,
But your
It's
skills are
not
also
sustainable.
compounding, and you want to make sure you reward that.
It's not
If you lost an
sustainable.
employee.
mathematically, I don't believe it's
It is sustainable. It's been going on for, 40, 50
Well,
years.
it has been going on, and however it works, it does seem like, even though you do this sometimes, the private and the public do kind of, they sort of self-adjust over time.
Over the past year, I believe Governor Cox stated that the sector that had the largest growth in our state was government.
Yes,
Right.
and I am concerned about that, and
And who would have
so,
thought in Utah?
and Natalie Gottnauer, am I saying that right?
Gochner?
Yes.
She talked about that at the ACEC conference today and said construction was the #1 sector last year, government was #2. I don't know how that compares with, but I guess that's my point too, is I'm like, government should not be one of the largest growth sectors. So my question for you, staff, is I'm not necessarily, I know that Centerville comes in, I really appreciate that you come in with a very wise budget, but if we had to cut something, because I don't know where there's necessarily fluff, but we have to consider that if the people that are working in our city can't afford to pay the taxes, what are we cutting?
So I will share that
And that may be a
Yeah,
conversation
so-
for another night, but just a discussion point.
employees are our #1 asset, right? And
Yeah.
I'll share that repeatedly, that it's really critical that we maintain and be competitive at the 60%. Not only because we want to reward and take care of those who are loyal to the city and learn their skills and trades here, and we want them to stay, but also we can hold them accountable. That if we say, look, you're not meeting our expectations, that when we do part ways with that employee, we're able to find someone in our competitive pay to replace that employee. So there's opportunity. When you don't pay very well, sometimes you create this situation where you get what you got, right? And you're just stuck with that.
Well,
employee.
Well, that was why I brought up this, so that's why I brought up this COLA and merit thing first, is because I don't necessarily think that is where the cut should ever be, because of what, we've talked about this. So I guess I was prefacing that question of, I'm like, we don't necessarily want to, I'm saying, where could we cut?
Well, and I look at that too. If we're the lowest paying and somebody's out looking for a job, we get the one that nobody else wanted.
Right.
Because I'm gonna go to Bountiful, I'm gonna go to Farmington if they're gonna pay me $2, $3, $4 an hour more. But now I'm the guy who came in bottom of my class and really doesn't know how to
Right.
do it. But that's who Centerville hires because he's the only one left to hire. Because, when our police go to the academy to try and hire a police officer, there's kind of a little bidding war up there for him. And you don't want to come in and have them say, well, I'll give you this, and I'll give you this, and I'll give you this, and you're like, well, I'll give you $3 less than the other one gave you, and they're like, no, thanks.
Really
And then the
nice
guy
people.
that nobody wanted, you just brought home, you got the last pick for the team.
That's why I've repeatedly supported Brant's administrative approach to be at about that 60% level. And
Right.
so I think the question you're making is a good question, Gina,
But not necessarily about our employees. I'm
No,
saying,
right.
well, it's
No,
in
we
the
don't take it.
budget,
And I
I
hope staff, I can hear some chatter back there, and hopefully they don't feel like we don't support them.
Right.
I think that you're asking a valid point within the construct of, we want to still be competitive in our benefits, overall benefits package, such that when somebody, number one, we don't want to lose people first and foremost.
Right.
Absolutely.
And we don't
Because
want the
that
bottom of
was-
the barrel either.
That was the problem when we first were, this is 3 or so years ago, we're losing police officers, we're losing some of our public works people.
Right.
We don't want to be training all these people and putting money, and not only then to lose them because we're not able to provide the benefit package accordingly, and yet we want to use our revenue dollars appropriately, so we're trying to be in that fine balance, and I'm just bringing up, my points are just food for thought for everybody.
And some of this, I guess, is not necessarily me saying I don't approve of where the budget's sitting right now. I'm actually feeling fine with the budget, but we're seeing a little bit of decrease in sales tax. I guess I'm looking at it and going, maybe it's not this year, but we need to be looking at the overall, if the economy is softening a little bit, what are we doing
So
as
the
we
question
move
is,
through
are you,
this to?
that's a great question, because if the economy softens, do you say, I don't want to charge, and I lose sales tax revenue, do I need to make that up in a property tax increase, and therefore, or do I need to cut services here? And then the citizens will say, no, I like my high level of service. So that's a policy question.
And that's
And I think our residents would err on the side of, wait, I like our level of service
right.
here, or I like our level of infrastructure here.
I just want to make sure that we as a council, whatever we approve and whatever happens in the next year, it was very helpful to me, like when we did the property tax a couple of years ago, it was helpful to be able to really explain and know so well what was in the budget that, you know, everyone I talked to on the side, they were like, oh yeah, I don't want to give that up.
Yeah.
So I'm fine with the property tax increase. I just want to make sure that we know, you know, if there is somewhere, like what could be cut if we had to.
If anybody,
And I'm talking about optional things, and like I said, not necessarily like our employee benefits or their potential COLA and merit increases. I'm just trying to say, what else, you know, what are
when
our,
I had questions about the property tax increase, I said, great, here's the copy of the budget. I've reviewed it X number of times in detail. Take a look at it and let me know where you think we should save. And I didn't get anybody specific responses.
Oh,
Mostly it was support, and some other people said, I just don't want to pay more. And I said, great, that's not an answer.
that's not an answer. And frankly, I think that's really, like a compliment to city staff, because I do feel like, I really do like the way that we, you know, you come in and point everything out, and it's really helpful that you show where the increases and the decreases are.
And yet we're still going to push you, staff.
I still, in a meeting like this, I still want our residents to know, for anyone that probably is not listening, but I want them to know that we, like, really went through this in detail, because I think we are going through it in detail. I just want to make sure it's on the public record.
So I think what, Councilwoman, no, I'm not gonna say, I think what she's saying.
You can.
What I would say is that I agree with her on the standpoint of the coal and merit, that it's in line, just because I've done surveys with my other mayors, okay? And and I think our employees are critical, but I think when we look at 5 council members and 1 mayor, you have to look if you have a downturn in sales tax and that sort of thing. A combination of cutting and increasing we all have, outside of our employee costs, projects that we're passionate about, okay? And so even amongst ourselves, I appreciate what she's saying for looking to the future of where would it be? Because we all would have to give on something that's our passion. Because we all have different passions. No, you can't cut that, you know?
That's
I
fine, Mayor.
agree.
As long as you don't cut anything on infrastructure, I'm fine. I'm just kidding. That was probably.
I'd second that.
That's really true. I have just a dumb question to show how dumb I am. So we're saying we're given 5.6 basically. But yet, now if I come here on the police department, it says salary and wages is an increase of 4%. Why does it say 4%? Doesn't say 3%, it says 4%.
So within each department, you're gonna have, so for example, we've had, in the police department specifically, we've lost 2 officers and have hired newer officers. So.
They're cheaper.
Could there, right, when you lose an officer that's been here for, I don't know how long these officers were, but let's, for example, say
12 years.
12 years.
Okay.
They're gonna be paid here. When you take someone out of the academy, they're starting out at the bottom of the salary range. So you're gonna have, you know, what was being paid out this year could potentially be less. There's other departments where there's a few promotions involved.
That makes sense.
So
I
you may
can
see
that.
salaries
But
that
so
are
if I
more
work
than
for
the-
Public Works and I want to know what percentage of raise I'm going to get, and I want to look at this in the morning, how am I going to do that?
The department head will meet with you and tell you what your
Yeah, that's
percentage.
exactly right. You'll get 3.6% and then possibly 0 to 2.
But
Or
you can't
more,
tell
'cause
that
there's
from
a
here.
bucket.
There's nowhere on
No,
here
but
that
these
says that.
discussions we've had, they know.
Okay.
Wait a
That
minute.
was, I just wondered if they could get on here and
These
look
are all
at this.
public.
It is in the budget message.
So these conversations happen a long time with department heads, and when we're to a point where, as a council, you feel comfortable. We don't necessarily go out and But once we have the first budget retreat and we announce it publicly, is when we let the employees know what's
Robin,
being
it's
discussed.
in the
Okay,
You don't let them know before.
In the first
narrative
page.
at the beginning of the budget.
okay.
Page 2.
But generally, the department heads can release that information at a certain time. How they release it or when they release it.
Page 2,
it's
first
up-
paragraph of personnel. Good job, Lee.
Mayor, are you looking for a motion?
We need a public hearing.
She's done. Can I, before, I'm done with my comments, but I was gonna, I should have pointed out too
We do
that-
need to start at 4:30 because Shailene can't make it past 9.
Yeah.
I've just found out. But
Yeah.
my fellow council member who sits next to me, I see her like dragging about 9 and I'm ready to keep it going.
Yeah. Also, I just wanted to point out medical and dental insurance, the 9.9%, which was higher than expected, also in line with what they reported on in the private sector today.
And I will share that next year, we're evaluating that entire part. We have 3 different medical plans that just don't make any sense. We thought about unveiling it this year, rolling it out this year, but we didn't have enough time when we got the numbers. We could be better about how we offer medical, not reducing benefits, but anyway, there's opportunities there.
We did negotiate that down.
It was at 13.1%, challenged them. I told them to tell Select Health, take a hike, or we're gonna go out to bid.
Yeah.
And they went to Select Health, says, okay, we can go 9.9. So great, we won't go out to bid this year, but we'll go out to bid next year, right? So it was at 13.1.
Thank you for doing that, because it's that industry that's got its problem,
It was really frustrating. High insurance.
Select Health specifically.
Yes. I have some additional information for you. Let's
Okay,
sit
we'll
down and
talk.
chat before
All right.
next year.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Hayman. Unless there's more discussion, are we ready for a motion?
I move that we adopt the fiscal year 2020.
You need a public hearing.
Public hearing
Oh, wait.
And you don't make a motion for
It'd be
it.
really funny if all 4 of them
Got
came stuff in line.
That's for me.
I might quit.
So, I'm gonna open up a public hearing, but Shay, then you gotta realize that we all might move down there and become citizens.
Yeah, because I might not be done talking.
Okay, we're now open the public hearing for the fiscal year 2025 tentative budget. Any member of the public that's in person or online can comment. Just identify yourself and where you're from.
See, no staff even wants to take up that joke because they want to be done too.
No, it depends on what their bids were. But I think they've all underbid tonight.
Nate's dying to present again. He's front row. Seeing no comments, I will close the public hearing, and we will now go to the motion.
I move that we adopt the fiscal year 2025 proposed budget as the fiscal year 2025 tentative budget and set the date for the public hearing on the fiscal year 2025 final budget for June 4th at 7 p.m. at Centerville City Hall.
Second.
Motion is second. Last minute for further discussion? Okay, we'll vote. Starting with Councilman Summerhays.
Aye.
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 Okay, that's unanimous. Hey, thank you, Nate.
Thank you.
I have a tough time cutting off this kind of discussion because even though we didn't go off topic, we went still to money things and budget things, but there are things that we need to have done and want to see done as council and want staff to know that we'd like to see those taken care of. So I appreciate the great discussion.
Even though I was trying
I'm not saying you
I was
don't.
not trying to cut off any discussion.
Mayor just wants to know what your favorite caffeinated beverage is for
Yeah.
next meeting.
I'm on the same time on caffeine free. I need more caffeine, yeah.
Okay, let's go to summary action. On the summary action, we have 3 items. We have a bid award at 1250 North Culinary Waterline, North Culinary Waterline Materials, and Parks Department vehicle purchase. If there's any questions of staff, make those questions. Otherwise, if you remember, as always with these, on your motion to include the description of the award and the amount.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we approve the bid award of the 1250 North Culinary Water Line to Ormond Construction in the amount of $283,000, $283,421.42. Also, a bid award for 1250 North Culinary Water Line materials to Mountain Land Supply in the amount of $63,964.46. And lastly, a Parks Department vehicle purchase for a new Toyota Tundra in the amount of $28,292.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, further discussion?
Just real quick, Mayor, Mike or Dave, on the question for the bid tabulation for the water line replacement, the actual, we only got 2 estimates on that one? There are only 2 bidders. I was surprised by that.
Yeah. And the second bid was quite a bit more, wasn't it?
Yeah, it wasn't even close.
It was like more than double.
Yeah.
So it's a great question, because we got to the point where we had 3, 4, 5 bidders.
Well, our supplies one, we got 5 bids on
Yeah.
Yeah.
water line materials.
Are we getting back to the era, we only are getting a couple bids, or? Not open line?
Yeah.
So if we would have been earlier in the year, we would have been okay, but with the problems we had at Peachtree, trying to figure out how to make that job work and not being able to make it work, that's just what we're seeing, is a little bit of different costs now.
I'm just glad that Orman was as low as they were,
Yeah,
as opposed
us
to
too.
Right.
It's
competing.
great to work with. We have a good relation.
Yeah.
Mike's maintained a good relationship with
Yeah, they're good.
Yeah, that's all I'll comment.
All right, let's vote. Let's start with, to my left, with Councilwoman Hayman.
Aye.
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 That passes. Okay, next one, minutes, review and approval, April 9th, special city council minutes. That was the jibe branding, April 16th, city council work session, April 16th, city council, and April 24th, special city council minutes. Any question on those minutes that, or changes you'd like to propose? If not, motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, appointments. So we're just keeping it within the family here, but Brooke Lewis was unable, because of present commitments, to serve on the Park and Recreation Committee. But her husband, Jeff Lewis, was willing to do it. I sent you out, I got his resume, so to speak, and sent that all out to you. And so I'm just looking for your advice and consent and approval of Jeff Lewis to the Parks and Rec Committee.
So moved. Jeff will be great.
He'll be awesome.
Great, so
Great
moved.
individual.
You a second then?
Yes, I am.
We got a second. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. Oh, wow, you know, we get to hear Councilmember Brian Plummer. I was going through this agenda and realized that because of caucus meetings, has never gotten a report yet. And I say, we need to move him up because we want to hear from him.
Yes,
So-
those caucus meetings.
So
I
you can
appreciate this.
You can throw tomatoes at me because I moved you up.
No, I
We want to hear
appreciate
from
it.
you.
I actually think it was good because a lot of what the tree board does is really at the beginning of the year anyway. And then they go on a kind of a slower schedule after summer is over. But thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am giving a report on the tree board and the Centerville Civilian Corps. So, first I'd like to express my appreciation for the dedication of the tree board and their commitment to preserving our natural environment. Under the leadership of Sarah Stetler as board chair and Linda Porter as vice chair, the tree board has been actively engaged in this mission. Recently, they organized Arbor Day celebration on April 26th, collaborating with local elementary schools for an art contest themed If I Was a Tree. Although I was unable to attend the art show at the Reading Elementary, I eagerly await viewing the submitted artwork and recognizing the winners. Additionally, the tree board has scheduled a tree tour at the Centerville City Cemetery on May 13th at 7 p.m. I recently attended the Centerville Civilian Corps meeting on this past Saturday for the first time. I had the opportunity to attend and meet a group of people that have impressed me based upon their expertise and dedication to this cause. This year, this Corps is focusing on enhancing community preparedness for emergencies, particularly by ensuring effective communication systems. Don Wood's initiative to reprogram radios for extended use is part of what they've been doing. The distribution of these radios to key community figures they're already dispersed among those people, but he's going and making sure that they are at ready level and will last for a continued amount of time. It's important to note that the radio communication will primarily receive instructions. Those that have those radios will receive messages and listen rather than giving out information. Kelly Sharp has proposed proposed to strengthen community resilience through interfaith collaboration. He has suggested that we reach out as a city to other faiths that are interested in the safety and emergency preparedness of Centerville. Currently, Centerville is only or has a bilateral agreement with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and it was initiated by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So it was not something that was done intentionally, but it is what is in place now. Mr. Sharp has looked at working with the Episcopalian Church and any other churches within the boundary of Centerville to foster more of a working relationship that would hopefully bring about some sensitivity to different religions and cultures and opening that opportunity to serve on this civilian corps to the greater populace of Centerville. So looking forward, currently the Centerville Civilian Corps is preparing for a shakeout event for earthquake preparedness. Even though it was just a couple of weeks ago, I think that they had missed that and that they're looking for another opportunity to have that come up. Also, they're looking to prepare for the Preparedness Fair that's scheduled for September 7th, and that is something that they're looking for volunteers and hope to have as many volunteer tables as possible that would share information on emergency preparedness.
Thank you. September 7th, the Preparedness Fair?
Yes.
And that's usually the one done down at the theaters.
The movie theater, correct.
And are you done?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Very good report. Any questions for him? I want to commend Councilman Plummer because I set him up a little bit, but he got to that Centerville Citizen Corps meeting on Saturday morning, and it was probably my fault, but I was down Friday afternoon with Louisa McDonald, and they didn't realize that you were the liaison. So she quickly got on, and while she was there, she said, I'm inviting him for tomorrow, so thank you for adjusting your schedule and
Absolutely.
getting to it.
Absolutely.
Before it gets light outside, that's when they meet.
Typically
They're dedicated.
It's a very good time to have it. That being said, with kids and sports, I think that 7:30 is actually a perfect time for me to, so great, I'm there. But it was actually a great opportunity. I was impressed, as I said, with the people that are there working to make our communities as safe as possible. So I look forward to being able to attend more of those.
Right, because that's critical, that preparedness, obviously, to our city. And as I talked with Chief and Louisa Friday afternoon, they said, you always think you are, but there's always more you can be doing. So, and they were pleased with what the committee chair, Kelly Sharp's, doing as well, too. But so, yeah, that's critical. We have that contact. So thank you. Okay, yeah.
Just a quick update on a couple of my items. We're trying to fill 2 board seats at the rec center. We have 16 applications for those 2 board seats, and we're gonna try and narrow those down and make 2 selections, I think, on potentially even Monday night. So I was just glad to see so much feedback for those 2 board seats. And then on the trail side, Kate Bradshaw, council member at Bountiful City, is working to organize a tri-city-ish coordination meeting on trails that would include North Salt Lake and us staff members. So I might reach out, Brent, and just chat with you about a couple staff members, as well as a Trails Committee. We've got a couple there. So that will probably take place either May or July, depending on how that shakes out. Just getting good trail connections between between all 3 cities. And awesome. I had a chance to ride about 30 miles of them on Saturday, so it was great.
Awesome. So that's Bountiful, us, and who do it?
North Salt Lake.
North Salt Lake. Okay. All right, thank you. Anybody else, anything pressing right now? Okay. Mayor report, let me just say that we met as an audit committee yesterday, and we'll bring it to you very shortly some results that was done by our drainage department that we'll be doing a presentation with you on. I'm going to bring my league report to you later because I had it all prepared, the League of City Towns report, but I left it at home. Brandon Burt contacted me today, and in a couple of weeks we're going to be having a re-grand opening of the tire store, the Centerville Tire Store that was bought by Burt Brothers. Had a wonderful fire training day with Shaylin and some other new council members, and we did it in the rain, and it was a great experience. I mean, it's worth getting and to know to see what they do, don't you think?
I thought it was incredibly worthwhile and very informative.
Yeah, and I didn't throw the gear on this time, but I wish I had again. I should have, because I'd already done it twice, but.
Yeah, we did Jaws of Life.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I threw a ladder. Wait, I attempted to throw a ladder.
The Day of Service Committee starting to meet again to prepare for the Day of Service that is done in our city in September. They had their first meeting a week or 2 ago. Let's see, general plan, that's probably kind of Mike Eggett's type of thing, but if he wants to say more, you're sure welcome. But we vetted the 4 RFPs, and then we brought in 3 to interview, and Gene and I were there, as well as 4 or 5 staff, and we felt good about the company we selected, and Mike's moved ahead and got a hold of them, and also let the others know as well too. Anything else you want to say on that, Mike?
No, I'm just waiting for a contract from the selected firm, and we'll go from there.
So no formal award yet until the contract's signed?
The hope is the next meeting.
Okay.
We'll have
Great.
And I'll be here for the next meeting to present to the council.
Oh, awesome. Okay. Get rolling on that.
Then the last thing is I attended, not necessarily mayoral duties, but at Symphony Hall Saturday night, a program called God Bless America, and they brought new meaning and restored meaning to me as we did that Pledge of Allegiance tonight of how blessed we are in this country and the freedoms that we have. Sorry. So anyway, that's my report. Okay, so any questions for me? All right. City Manager, Brent.
I can follow that, Mayor. Just like Taylor Swift, I too have 31 items to go over. Member Hammond? I'm just kidding. I just have a few items. I won't go into too much detail. I've brought it up in the past. Wasatch integrated the mandatory recycling program that they have made some changes to that program. Now, again, it doesn't necessarily impact Centerville all that much since we already have a pretty good program here. We have 93% sign-up rate, I would say 50% participation rate, but we actually do pretty well in the county. But again, the concern is having a district mandate fees on a city and programs on a city and penalizing us if we don't follow their program. That's more so us, as at least as city managers, we're unified behind saying, look, we're happy to participate in what you're doing, but these mandates we have the same position if it was the state, right? So, but progress has been made. The conversations, I think, have been promising. Just want to touch on League and UCMA. There's a lot I can go over. I'm not going to go over it all tonight. But one of the items I just want to highlight that is really a tough session to listen to, but I think important, was Dr. Susan Madsen. I don't know if you know who she is, but she comes to UCMA quite often to kind of remind us about the importance of women in the workforce and how we can be better, particularly overall, about promoting women and giving opportunities. But what she really focused on this time was talking about when we compare women, and I really want to be careful, we compare the statistics, the 7 key indicators of women in the state of Utah, we're almost dead last across the country. Domestic violence, sexual assaults. And I think that's really, really critical for us to be aware of that happening in our state and what we can do in our organization to promote women and to just be in a better situation to challenge those statistics, right? And I think it's really great hearing from Dr. Susan Madsen about these conversations, because they're tough dialogues to have, tough conversations, but it's given me definitely a different perspective sometimes when I'm having conversations and what to look out for if I'm having my own sort of unconscious bias. She challenged one time this last UCMA conference 3 years ago to have that woman mentor that can check you and saying, hey, maybe you need to bring it back. And so Leah Romero was actually mine, where I says, hey, Leah, if I'm not recognizing or I'm stepping out of line, I need you to poke me and say, you need to step back. So anyway, I just want to put that out there that I think we can all be better, and I'm going to challenge myself over the next year to really promote and better myself in promoting women in the workplace, creating opportunities. If I'm not already, I don't know. But anyway, I just thought that was a great session to kind of highlight that. I think that one touched me the most this last session. So with that, Mayor, that's all I have.
Thank you. And I thought he would touch on the Wasatch Integrated Waste Management, so I left that to him. But we're mainly moving towards an approach. I'm on the executive board there, and 2 Mondays ago, Nathan Rich and myself and the other 2 executive board members were in our conference room after a meeting down here. We're going more towards an approach of reward those that are doing recycling, and the other cities that don't want to, then kind of like we're talking about with water fees, that they pay more. So that's the more of approach we're going to. But like Brent says, we're making progress. So. All right, thank you, Brent. Any other questions for Brent? Okay. If nothing else, then do I have a motion to adjourn?
I would like to call for a closed meeting to discuss the individual character, professional competence, and physical or mental health, and the strategy sessions to discuss pending reasonable intimate, I can't say now, litigation, yeah.
With no intent to
with no
return.
intent to return to the city council meeting.
Okay. Do a second on that?
I'll second it.
Okay. We got to take a vote on that, and 2/3 of voting, so. Councilman Meekum.
Aye.
Sure, yeah, I don't see why not.
Aye.
Aye.
All righty, great. So that means council's adjourned.